Chapter 58. Comminuted fractures all over the body. Hearing Zhou Lin's words, the arms that were originally stubbornly raised suddenly fell down. It seemed that this opportunity to spar with Zhou Lin wasn't a good thing. For a moment, everyone looked at Qin Xuan and Lu Zi with strange gazes. If Zhou Lin ignored everyone's wishes and directly pointed out that Qin Xuan and Lu Zi had nothing to do with each other, then they would eat the arms that were raised just now. Faced with everyone's strange gazes, Lu Zi appeared rather calm. She was very curious as to how many moves Qin Xuan could withstand from Zhou Lin, who was in the first level of the Qi refining stage with his current strength. Qin Xuan walked up to the podium and stood in front of Zhou Lin. Looking at Zhou Lin's cold expression, Qin Xuan felt that he was definitely going to be beaten up today. Seeing Qin Xuan's helpless expression, Zhou Lin's expression turned cold. She said in a low voice, "Qin Xuan, if you face your enemy with this attitude, then you will definitely die. Remember, I'm not your senior right now. I'm an enemy who wants to kill you." Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Xuan's expression immediately became serious. He knew that Zhou Lin was going to be serious, so he adjusted his attitude and his body correspondingly went into a defensive posture. Seeing the changes in Qin Xuan's body, Zhou Lin nodded lightly and said, "Remember, you must give it your all. Otherwise, you may die." As her voice fell, Zhou Lin moved. Her figure was as swift as the wind, and her aura was as aggressive as fire. In the blink of an eye, she closed in on Qin Xuan. It was just a simple straight punch, but it made Qin Xuan feel that he couldn't block it. At this moment, Qin Xuan's expression suddenly became serious. He let out a low roar and tried his best to dodge. He didn't have any intention of meeting force with force. However, even though Qin Xuan tried his best to dodge, Zhou Lin's punch still landed on his shoulder. His entire body immediately flew backwards and landed heavily on the ground with a bang. In the square, everyone stared dumbfounded at the scene before them. No one would have thought that Qin Xuan couldn't even withstand one move from Zhou Lin. Facing everyone's shocked gazes, Zhou Lin's expression was rather calm. She looked at Qin Xuan, who was struggling to stand up from the ground, and said in an indifferent tone, "This is my strength when I was in the first level of the Qi refining stage. If I wanted to kill you now, you wouldn't even have the chance to struggle. By me, I was already holding back on that punch just now. If your reaction was a little faster, you should be able to dodge it." Qin Xuan's success. Cheese is a genius. Success. Even if it's just the first level of the Qi refining stage cultivator, it's still not something you can withstand. Originally, the crowd didn't have much respect for the Qi refining stage. After all, the Qi refining stage was just the beginning of a cultivator. It wasn't much different from the body refining stage. But today, Zhou Lin used reality to teach everyone a lesson. Although it wasn't much of a difference in their eyes, it was enough to crush them. Challenging someone above your level only exists in legends. In reality, there are very few people who can do this. At least, I haven't found anyone among you who has such an ability. Right now, Qin Xuan is no exception. Zhou Lin calmly explained a fact to the crowd. Even someone as outstanding as Qin Xuan couldn't pose any threat to a Qi refining stage cultivator at this stage. As for the future, it would depend on Qin Xuan's speed of improvement. If Qin Xuan could really reach the perfect stage, then maybe he could really challenge someone above his level. At this moment, Qin Xuan had already climbed up from the ground. He held his shoulder that was already swollen and painful, and said to Zhou Lin, again. Hearing Qin Xuan's words, the crowd below the stage was a little stunned. He had clearly lost. Why did he have to go again? Zhou Lin was also a little puzzled. She looked at Qin Xuan with a puzzled expression and said, "No matter how many times we go, you won't be my match." The reason why Zhou Lin chose Qin Xuan as her opponent wasn't because of selfishness. She really wanted to let Qin Xuan know how big the gap between him and a Qi refining stage cultivator was. She was worried that during this period of training in the special training camp, she would give Qin Xuan the false impression that he was already invincible. Not putting a Qi refining stage cultivator in his eyes was better than losing his life in front of others. Senior sister, if you were an enemy, would you stop attacking after just one punch? Qin grinned and said, I just want to see how long I can last in the hands of a first-level Qi refining stage cultivator with my current ability, and whether or not I really can't withstand a single blow. Hearing Qin words, the way the crowd looked at Qin suddenly changed. No one would have thought that after losing, not only was Qin not discouraged, he actually had the idea of testing his own limits. Could it be that this was the gap between them and a true genius? Good. Zhou Lin only said one word and once again launched an attack on Qin. This time, Qin was completely focused, but he still couldn't dodge Zhou Lin's fist. In front of Zhou Lin, his ever-victorious brain domain suppression was completely useless. On the contrary, he was suppressed by Zhou Lin in every aspect. Qin fell to the ground once again, but this time, Zhou Lin didn't stop attacking. Instead, she took advantage of the situation to pursue and attack, as if she really wanted to behead Qin on the spot. And Qin was also doing his best to struggle for survival. He did his best to dodge the fatal attack, nimbly climbed up from the ground, and cautiously and with great difficulty began to contend with Zhou Lin. The crowd below the stage watched as Qin fell again and again, but stood up again and again. Their feelings were extremely complicated. If they were in Qin's shoes, would they be able to persevere to this extent? Asking themselves honestly, they felt that they couldn't do it. It was because of this that they were more aware of the gap between themselves and Qin. Luzi's gaze was somewhat subtle as she looked at Qin, who was struggling under Zhou Lin's attacks. Qin was clearly beaten black and blue, but in her eyes, Qin's image was better than anyone else's. That kind of fearless spirit of never giving up was something that all of them could learn from. Was I wrong to have decided to give up on that dream back then? Luzi's heart suddenly had some realization. In the past, when faced with difficulties, she chose to avoid. She thought that she had made the right decision, but seeing Qin's current performance, she suddenly realized that she had made the wrong choice. Avoiding meant admitting defeat. This was never the right decision. She had always been deceiving herself and others. Qin, I really have to thank you. Luzi looked at Qin with gratitude. Looking at the trace of blood flowing from the corner of Qin's mouth, her heart suddenly filled with infinite courage. Chapter 59. Even though Qin had used up the last of his strength, he was still unable to cause any trouble to Zhou Lin. At this moment, Qin was lying on the ground, and there was not a single spot on his body that was unharmed. During this exchange, Zhou Lin had hundreds of opportunities to kill him in one hit. Qin could clearly feel all of this. A huge gap. Qin gritted his teeth and clenched his bloody fists. He finally recognized the reality that he was not strong enough. Just when he thought that he had worked hard enough and that he was strong enough, Zhou Lin promptly poured a basin of ice-cold water on his burning head, completely waking him up. What he had done now was far from enough. Carry him away. Zhou Lin glanced at Qin, who was no longer able to fight, and said to the special training camp staff, use the best treatment liquid. I want to see him full of vigor tomorrow at this time. Zhou Lin had personally beaten Qin into this state. In fact, her heart ached for him, but this was a trial that Qin had to go through. If he did not experience this bloody lesson, it might not be a good thing for Qin's future growth. Instructor Zhou, can I experience it? Just when everyone was silent, Luzi suddenly took a step forward and said to Zhou Lin in an extremely serious tone, in the past, I always thought that I was a blessed daughter of heaven, a future talisman array master with astonishing potential. I was arrogant and conceited and did not put the people around me in my eyes. I thought that I was the strongest existence. However, during this special training camp, I realized that I am only a weak little grass. Before I grow into a towering tree, anyone can step on me. Even if I grow into a big tree, there might not be no one who can cut off my trunk. If I only watch the battle, it will be difficult for me to truly understand the gap, so I want to experience it myself. Hearing Luzi's serious request, everyone present was extremely surprised. As a talented girl from an aristocratic school, Lu Zi was extremely famous in the state capital of Qing. They all knew Lu Zi very well and knew that Lu Zi had always been a proud person. They had never thought that one day, Lu Zi would actually admit her shortcomings and even humbly ask for advice from her peers. This made everyone think of Qin Chuan. At this moment, Lu Zi and Qin Chuan were so similar. Zhou Lin looked deeply at Lu Zi and said, "Come up." Soon, there was one more patient in the treatment room. Although Zhou Lin had already shown some mercy to Lu Zi was still a little weaker than Qin Chuan. This was the first time that the students of the aristocratic school had seen Lu Zi in such a miserable state since they had met Lu Zi. They could not bear to look at it. Today, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi's performance was destined to be unforgettable. Many years later, when Qin Chuan and Lu Zi stood at a height that they could never hope to reach, everyone would recall what had happened today with extremely complicated feelings. If only they had not been afraid and did not shrink back that day and bravely went up the stage, would they have also been able to reach such heights? However, it was already too late to regret it by then. Let's not talk about the latter part for now. The matter of Qin Chuan and Lu Zi both being sent to the treatment room still caused quite a stir in the special training camp. This made everyone feel as if they were singing along with the husband and wife. Early the next morning, when Qin Chuan walked out of the treatment cabin feeling refreshed, he saw Lu Zi walking out of the treatment cabin opposite him. He looked at Lu Zi with some astonishment and asked, "What's with you?" Lu Zi smiled slightly and said, "You can challenge your own limits, so can I." At this point, Lu Zi said to Qin Chuan with some emotion, "Before yesterday, I really did not think that the gap between me and the first level of the qi refining stage would be so huge. There were some things that had to be experienced personally before one could truly comprehend them." Lu Zi felt that her decision yesterday was really very wise. This would benefit her greatly in this lifetime. Amazing. Qin Chuan gave Lu Zi a thumbs up. "You're better than me. I was called up, but you went up on your own initiative." "Awesome." Lu Zi stretched and looked at Qin Chuan flirtatiously. Suddenly, she lifted her feet and slowly walked in front of Qin Chuan. She said to Qin Chuan in a rather complicated tone, "After life in the special training camp, it might be very difficult for us to meet again." Although they had only known each other for a short time, Lu Zi had already treated Qin Chuan as her friend. She liked the feeling of being with Qin Chuan very much. It was very unrestrained, very relaxed, and very comfortable. An optical computer is a good thing. Although I'm poor, I still have one on Star. Qin Chuan grinned. "If you don't mind, you can add me as a friend on Star. We can video chat then." "Okay, but we'll have to wait until tomorrow." Lu Zi would not tell Qin Chuan that she did not have a Star account. She used to think that this kind of social media app was very boring, but now she was willing to apply for a new Star account for some things and some people. Coincidentally, she also needed a new beginning in her life. In the special training camp, it had become normal for Qin Chuan and Lu Zi to go in and out together. Everyone gradually got used to Qin Chuan and Lu Zi training together after class every day. Occasionally, some people would join the training, but they would often leave very quickly. There was no other way. They could not be as focused and serious as Qin Chuan and Lu Zi. Seeing that life in the special training camp was coming to an end, although Qin Chuan's physical fitness had greatly improved, his brain development was still stagnant at 89% with no progress. In Zhou Lin's words, 89% to 90% was a hurdle that could not be crossed so easily. However, once this hurdle was crossed, it would be much easier in the future. Qin Chuan also understood this, so he was not in a hurry. Moreover, he was waiting for an opportunity. Perhaps when that opportunity came, he would be able to cross this hurdle. On the 27th day of life in the special training camp, when there were still 3 days left before the end, Qin Chuan waited for that opportunity. It was a stormy day. In Zhou Lin's private bedroom, Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin sitting on the sofa and said to her very seriously, "I need some lightning stones and talisman pins. The opportunity to break through the 90% barrier is today." Qin Chuan needed to carry out this operation secretly, so he definitely could not do it in the special training camp. He needed to go out and find a safe place, and Cloud Dragon Mountain was the location that Qin Chuan had chosen. However, this required Zhou Lin's help. Zhou Lin had always been very concerned about Qin Chuan's cultivation. She looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said in a serious tone, "Be prepared. Crossing this hurdle is not an easy task. If you're not careful, you'll be in danger. Leave the lightning stones and talisman pins to me." Chapter 60. Black City, Kelly's store. Since the last transaction with Qin Chuan, Kelly had been looking forward to the next meeting with Qin Chuan. Unfortunately, apart from Zhou Meng representing Qin Chuan, she had never seen Qin Chuan again. This made Kelly feel very regretful and disappointed. As usual, Kelly sat lazily in front of the counter. However, there was an extra toy in her hand. It was a bottle of purple spirit liquid. It was the bottle that Qin Chuan returned. Kelly often played with it in her hand. "Hello, I need some lightning stones and lightning attribute talisman brushes." Hearing this somewhat familiar request, Kelly suddenly raised her head. When she saw that the person standing in front of her was a woman with an enchanting and sexy figure, she couldn't help but sigh in disappointment. She said weakly, "Do you want to buy with money or exchange with materials? If you exchange, the resources will be increased by 20%. Let's exchange." While speaking, Zhou Lin placed the cultivation resources obtained from Qin Chuan on the counter for Kelly to check. After confirming that there was no problem, Kelly handed over the lightning stones and lightning attribute talisman brushes to Zhou Lin. Then, she hesitated for a moment and asked, "Excuse me, is this your first time in my store?" Zhou Lin nodded her head and said, "It is indeed my first time. However, it was recommended by someone else." Zhou Lin didn't say the last sentence. After she received the items and confirmed that there was no problem, she turned around and left the store, preparing to leave Black City. At this time, Chu Ning of the City Lord Mansion had received the news that Zhou Meng's daughter, Zhou Lin, appeared in Kelly's store and bought some lightning stones and a lightning attribute talisman brush. Soon, Chu Ning reported this news to Chu Hua. After hearing Chu Ning's report, Chu Hua looked up at the dark sky of Black City and asked, "What's the weather outside?" "Thunderstorm," Chu Ning replied. Zhou Lin must have bought those lightning stones and lightning attribute talisman brushes for Qin Chuan. Last time, Zhou Meng bought the thunder guiding stone and the talisman brush from Kelly's store for Qin Chuan. This time, Zhou Meng's daughter bought the thunder guiding stone and the talisman brush from Kelly's store again. They were definitely for Qin Chuan and definitely not for anyone else. It seemed that Qin Chuan was planning to set up the lightning guiding talisman array again. Chu Hua pondered deeply for a moment, and then he said to Chu Ning, "Send people to keep an eye on Zhou Lin and see what she does next. Tell them to report the situation to you? No, to me directly." Zhou Lin bought the thunderstone and talisman pin and went back and forth very quickly. She returned to the special training camp before noon and found Qin Chuan having lunch. "Let's go." Zhou Lin went directly to Qin Chuan and said to Qin Chuan, "If we hurry up, we should be able to make it back for dinner." Lu Zi, who was eating opposite Qin Chuan, asked curiously, "Where are you going?" Zhou Lin glanced at Lu Zi indifferently and said, "Go ask him. If he is willing to tell you, I have no objection." When LVZ heard this, she immediately understood something. Hence, she smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "I'm done with my own training in the afternoon. I'll see if I've developed a good habit during this period of time." As for what Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin were going to do, Lu Zi did not ask anymore. She was a smart person. She knew that there were some things that she could ask and some things that she could not. Qin Chuan smiled apologetically at Lu Zi, then got up and left with Zhou Lin. The fewer people who knew that they were going to Cloud Dragon Mountain, the better. Even though Qin Chuan and Lu Zi had become friends, there were some things that did not need to be explained too clearly. There were differences between friends. Take Zhou Lin and Lu Zi, for example. If Qin Chuan encountered a problem and needed to find someone to solve it, the first person he would think of would be Zhou Lin and not Lu Zi. Zhou Lin was satisfied with Qin Chuan's performance. The two of them went directly to the parking area and took Zhou Lin's Skywalker 9 flying shuttle to leave the special training camp and go straight to Cloud Dragon Mountain. Qin Chuan sat in the back of the car and ate the pork shoulder. He asked Jolin, "Do you want some?" "I'm not hungry." Jolin frowned slightly. She did not like greasy food. Even if she wanted to eat vicious beast meat, most of the time, she would boil it into soup and drink it. She would definitely not eat it like Qin Chuan. On the way to Cloud Dragon Mountain, Jolin and Qin Chuan did not know that their every move had been monitored by someone with ulterior motives. In less than an hour, Qin Chuan and Jolin arrived at Cloud Dragon Mountain again. Looking at the slightly familiar forest, Qin Chuan suddenly frowned a little uneasily. "I keep feeling a little uneasy." Jolin pursed her lips and said to Qin Chuan, "Your feeling is not wrong. There are two people following us 3 kilometers behind us." At first, when they were in the city, Jolin thought that these people were just going in the same direction as them. However, when they left the city and headed towards Cloud Dragon Mountain, those people actually turned around and headed towards Cloud Dragon Mountain. This aroused Jolin's vigilance. Qin Chuan was a little surprised when he heard this. "Who are they coming for?" "I'm not sure." Jolin frowned slightly. During this period of time, she and Qin Chuan had been staying in the special training camp and did not go anywhere. Nothing had happened. Today, they were being watched as soon as they left the special training camp. There must be a problem somewhere. Naturally, Jolin thought of Black City. Today, she did not go anywhere except to Black City. If there was any action that attracted the attention of outsiders, it must be when she was in Black City. These people may be people from Black City. Jolin told Qin Chuan her guess. She felt that Qin Chuan should know something. When he heard Jolin say that these people were most likely from Black City, Qin Chuan's expression could not help but change slightly. He said to Jolin with a dignified expression, "It's my negligence. I shouldn't have let you go to Kelly's little store." Jolin's expression changed slightly and asked, "Is there a problem with the owner?" "It's not the owner who has a problem. The problem should be the City Lord Mansion of Black City." Qin Chuan smiled bitterly. He simply told Jolin how he got that batch of advanced cultivation resources. He really did not expect that after so long, those people from Black City were still watching him. Jolin, who was driving the shuttle, heard Qin Chuan's explanation. She gently raised her eyebrows and said, "It seems that the other party should be watching you because you recognize the 2 talisman arrays. But in that case, we should not be in any danger. In that case, let's go back and meet them." At this moment, Jolin suddenly turned around and went back the way she came. She went straight to the 2 people behind her. Compared to responding passively, Jolin preferred to take the initiative. Chapter 61. When Jolin brought Qin Chuan back the way they came, the 2 people who had been tailing them from a distance also realized that they had been exposed. However, they did not panic and avoid Qin Chuan and Jolin who were coming towards them. Instead, they went forward to meet them. The fact that they had exposed themselves earlier was most likely intentional. The 3 flying shuttles stopped about 100 meters away from each other. The 2 people who were following Qin Chuan and Jolin took the lead and opened the flying shuttle's cockpit. They walked out and stood on the ground. These 2 people's cultivation was only at the qi refining stage, so they weren't worth paying attention to. The important thing was that they were wearing the unique uniform of Black City's guards. This meant that Qin Chuan and Jolin's guess was correct. The people who were following them were indeed from Black City. "Why are you following us?" Jolin didn't rashly leave the flying shuttle. Facing the unclear situation, it was better to be careful. "Miss Zhou, we don't have any evil intentions." One of the Black City's guards slowly stepped forward. His expression was very respectful as he looked at Jolin and Qin Chuan Skywalker 9. His tone was very sincere as he said, "We represent the City Lord's will. We would like to invite young Master Qin to the City Lord's mansion as a guest. Of course, if Ms. Zhou is worried about a trap, you can also come along." Jolin sneered. "Even if I come along, I'm afraid I won't be able to make any waves in your City Lord's mansion." Although Jolin was very strong, but that was only among people of the same age. If the enemy was the City Lord's mansion, then her strength was completely insufficient. According to Jolin's understanding of Black City, every City Lord was at least at the middle stage of Foundation establishment stage. She wasn't a match for them. Please believe me, our City Lord's mansion is absolutely not willing to provoke a 4th-level talisman array master for no reason. Even our entire Black City Alliance may not be able to withstand that kind of anger. 4th-level talisman array master. Zhou Lin was somewhat astonished. She turned around and looked at Qin Chuan. Her eyes were filled with a strange expression. It was as if she was asking, "Are you the 4th-level talisman array master they're talking about?" Qin Chuan was also somewhat stupefied. He could barely be considered a half-baked 1st-level talisman array master. How did he become a 4th-level talisman array master? Could it be? Qin Chuan suddenly recalled the excuse he'd used to deceive Kelly that day. He'd once used the excuse that he had a grandfather who was a talisman formation master. In other words, the reason the city governor's estate targeted him wasn't because of something in his possession, but because of that non-existent grandfather of his. After figuring out the cause and effect, Qin Chuan really didn't know whether he should cry or laugh. Was this considered shooting himself in the foot? Qin Chuan glanced at Zhou Lin somewhat awkwardly before explaining in a soft voice, "The grade 4 symbol array master they were talking about should be me. However, there's a huge misunderstanding." When she heard Qin Chuan's explanation, Zhou Lin couldn't help but glance deeply at Qin Chuan, and then she said in a low voice, "Looks like I underestimated your potential in the Tao of Talisman Formation Masters. At the same time, I underestimated the value of those 2 talisman formations." Zhou Lin didn't know much about talisman formations, so she didn't know what the Spirit Reception Talisman Array and Spirit Injection Talisman Array meant. Similarly, Qin Chuan didn't know either. However, there was one thing that Zhou Lin could be sure of, and that was that the city governor's estate of a mere Black City really couldn't afford to provoke a grade 4 symbol array master. A grade 4 symbol array master was an almighty existence that even the Federation leader had to be polite to. You have to make a trip to the city governor's estate. However, there's no need to explain it clearly to them, because it's simply impossible to explain it clearly. It's better to let them continue to misunderstand. Zhou Lin thought for a moment and felt that Qin Chuan still had to make a trip to the city governor's estate. If this matter wasn't resolved, then it would be troublesome in the end. Qin Chuan nodded his head and smiled bitterly. He said to Zhou Lin, "I'm sorry, senior sister. This time, I've implicated you. Don't talk nonsense." Zhou Lin's gaze turned to the 2 guards of Black City who were waiting for a reply. She said to Qin Chuan, "Give a response." Qin Chuan thought for a moment, then said loudly to the 2 guards, "You guys go back first. Tell your city governor that it's impossible to see my grandfather because I can't see him now. However, I'll make a trip to the city governor's estate after the special training camp. The time is set to be within 5 days." After getting a definite answer from Qin Chuan, the 2 people were relieved. If this matter was messed up, then they would probably have to flee for their lives. "Thank you, young Master Qin. Then we won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye." Zhou Lin and Qin Chuan stayed in place and watched the 2 people's shuttle leave. Only when they disappeared from the radar range of the shuttle did Zhou Lin turn to Qin Chuan and ask, "Are you still going to Cloud Dragon Mountain?" After such a thing happened, if they went to Cloud Dragon Mountain again, Zhou Lin was worried that there would be another accident. Qin Chuan pursed his lips, gritted his teeth, and said, "I urgently need to become stronger. Now is not the time to lose. Let's go." Through today's events, Qin Chuan once again realized that there was a huge gap between him and a true powerhouse. If it wasn't for the fact that he had a fake grandfather to intimidate the other party, they might not have been able to escape so easily today. In the end, he was still too weak, so he needed to become stronger. He would never let go of any opportunity to become stronger. Black City, city governor's estate. Chu Hua stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at Black City outside the window. His mood was quite complicated. The news that came from the front really couldn't be considered to be good news to him. Qin Chuan would be visiting Black City within 5 days, and this represented that he had the opportunity to establish contact with that mysterious talisman formation master. However, he didn't know how long he would have to wait to see that mysterious talisman formation master. Ning, Or do you think Qin Chuan said that even he can't see his grandfather? Is it true or false? Chu Hua was a little upset, and he couldn't help but throw the question to his daughter. Chu Ning, who was standing aside, pondered for a moment and said to Chu Hua, "Father, I think Qin Chuan doesn't need to deceive us about this kind of thing. If a level 4 talisman array master is really at Qin Chuan's beck and call, then Qin Chuan wouldn't be forced to the point of going to the Hidden Dragon Arena." Chu Hua couldn't help but nod in agreement. Chu Ning's analysis was very reasonable. Even if the level 4 talisman array master was Qin Chuan's grandfather, he might not value Qin Chuan so much. The higher the cultivation, the more ruthless he was. He was quite clear about this. Since that's the case, then let's get in touch with Qin Chuan first. As for the talisman array, maybe we have to wait for a while. Chu Hua sighed softly. Without the support of the spiritual talisman array and spiritual injection talisman array, with his current ability, he would have to wait for at least another 5 years to step into the gold core stage. But he really couldn't wait anymore. I hope this kid can bring me some surprises. Chapter 62. North of the Cloud Dragon Mountain, in a slightly spacious mountainside. Qin Chuan looked at the relatively flat terrain in front of him and said to Zhou Lin beside him, "The terrain here is quite suitable. Let's do it here." Zhou Lin didn't know much about talisman arrays. Since Qin Chuan said that this place was suitable, she naturally didn't have any objections. She reached out and handed the bag containing the lightning guiding stones and talisman brushes to Qin Chuan and said, "According to your request, I bought 3 lightning guiding stones and a lightning attribute talisman brush. They're all here." Qin Chuan reached out and took the bag. When he saw the 3 fist-sized lightning guiding stones and the blue talisman brush, he couldn't help but feel like his heart was bleeding. With his current strength, if he wanted to rely on his own strength to set up the lightning guiding talisman array, he had to use a lightning attribute talisman brush and borrow the power of the talisman brush. Otherwise, there was basically no possibility of success. Talisman brushes that contained elemental power were often one-time consumables and were extremely expensive. With Qin Chuan's current wealth, he couldn't afford to use them more than a few times. So I'm still poor. Just this talisman brush used up half of the cultivation resources I plundered from the special training camp. Qin Chuan sighed painfully. I hope that I can successfully overcome that hurdle this time and develop my brain to above 90%. Otherwise, it would be too much of a loss. Looking at Qin Chuan's miserly appearance, Zhou Lin was a little speechless. When you become a true talisman array master, I guarantee that you'll earn money until your hands cramp. Cultivating a talisman array master required a lot of time and money. However, once it was successfully cultivated, this talisman array master would become an incomparably terrifying money-making machine. Earning money until one's hands cramped was no joke. I hope so. Qin Chuan grinned and took the talisman brush to an open space not far away. He took a deep breath and began to use the lightning power contained in the talent rune to activate the talisman brush and concentrate on inscribing the talisman array. As Qin Chuan slowly moved, light blue lines gradually appeared on the empty ground. As Qin Chuan continued to inscribe, these lines gradually connected together, forming a very complicated talisman diagram. Zhou Lin stood at the side and watched Qin Chuan concentrate on inscribing the talisman array. Her eyes were filled with admiration. Although Qin Chuan's performance was very unconventional, when it was time to be serious, Qin Chuan was absolutely unambiguous. Although Qin Chuan was still very weak, Zhou Lin could imagine that he would become the center of attention one day in the future. The lie of a Tier 4 talisman array master might become a reality in the near future. After inscribing the lightning talisman array, the talisman brush in Qin Chuan's hand was so dim that it was almost colorless. It was as if it could shatter at any time. Qin Chuan glanced at it and shook his head with some regret. Then he casually threw it into the forest not far away. Out of sight, out of mind. Now, Qin Chuan only needed to place the 3 lightning stones in the center of the talisman array. Then, he would use his talent rune to activate the talisman array. Then, he would be able to connect the heaven and earth and draw the lightning power down. Senior sister, you should stay away. Qin Xuan said to Zhou Lin, last time at the Hidden Dragon Arena, I only used 1 lightning stone. This time, I'm using 3. I'm afraid that the lightning power will be too strong and will hurt you. Hearing Qin Xuan's warning, Zhou Lin couldn't help but widen her eyes. Are you crazy? Why didn't you say something so important earlier? Zhou Lin had always thought that Qin Xuan had used 3 lightning stones last time. She never expected that he only used 1. Something bad would definitely happen if he acted recklessly like this. Hee. Although it's a little risky, I think it's worth it. Qin Xuan smiled and said, I knew you would definitely stop me. That's why I didn't make it clear at the beginning. All right, senior sister, it's too late to regret now. Quickly stay away. Originally, Qin Xuan didn't want to take such a risk. However, he had no other choice. He urgently needed to improve his strength, so he could only take the risk. This bastard, Zhou Lin gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. She could only retreat into the forest, as Qin Xuan said. She looked at Qin Xuan, who was at the center of the talisman array, and silently prayed for Qin Xuan. She hoped that nothing would happen to him. After seeing Zhou Lin retreat, Qin Xuan looked up at the sky and silently activated the talisman array's power with his talent rune. The moment the talisman array's power was activated, Qin Xuan couldn't help but feel numb, as if an electric current had passed through his body. Then, a bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket filled his vision. At that moment, the entire world seemed to have turned blue. Boom! An earth-shattering boom resounded on Cloud Dragon Mountain, startling countless birds and beasts into fleeing in all directions. In the forest, Zhou Lin worriedly looked at the violent lightning. She wanted to find Qin Xuan's figure, but besides the seemingly endless lightning, she couldn't see anything. In the center of the talisman array, Qin Xuan sat cross-legged on the ground. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists as he crazily circulated the thunder-devouring art. His body had already begun to crack due to the enormous power of lightning that could be said to be terrifying. Blood was everywhere. The extreme pain caused Qin Xuan's face to become incomparably twisted and ferocious, like a ghost. At that moment, Qin Xuan didn't dare to stop circulating the thunder-devouring art. This was because the talent rune alone couldn't completely absorb the power of lightning. Once the power of lightning went berserk, his body would definitely explode, and he would die. At that moment, Qin Xuan also knew that he had gone too far this time. However, it was too late for regrets. He could only do his best to make up for it. He believed that even if he only had 1 breath left, Zhou Lin would definitely find a way to save him. Just as Qin Xuan was doing his best to absorb the power of lightning, his brain, which had been stagnant all this time, suddenly showed signs of rupturing. The intense pain, which felt as if Qin Xuan's brain was about to split open, finally made Qin Xuan unable to hold it in any longer. He wailed out loud, "Ah!" accompanied by Qin Xuan's incomparably crazy howl. A series of cracking sounds rang out in Qin Xuan's brain. It was as if some invisible shackles had shattered at that moment. Then, Qin Xuan's brain suddenly swelled up. Almost at the same time, the endless lightning seemed to have found a direction to vent and crazily poured into Qin Xuan's brain. Qin Xuan was shocked. He wanted to stop all of this from happening, but it was already too late. Sizzle. When the last trace of the power of lightning poured into Qin Xuan's brain, the power of lightning that had dyed the area within 100 meters blue finally dissipated. At that moment, Qin Xuan finally couldn't hold on any longer. His vision turned black and he fainted. Chapter 63. Oh, this is... Qin Xuan woke up in a daze. He slowly opened his eyes and looked around. Soon, he realized that he was in a healing pod. Then, memories of what happened before he fainted flooded into his mind. Setting up a formation, attracting lightning. I've gone too far. After recalling what happened, Qin Xuan couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Sure enough, as long as he was still breathing, Zhou Lin would definitely be able to save him. At this moment, Qin Chuan was incomparably glad. If it weren't for Zhou Lin, he would have probably died in the wilderness. Beep, beep, beep. Following a series of mechanical sounds, the high-grade healing fluid in the healing pod slowly sank. At the same time, the pod door opened. Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin, who was standing outside the healing pod expressionlessly. He grinned and said, "Senior sister, I." Before Qin Chuan could finish his sentence, Zhou Lin suddenly reached out and violently pulled him out of the healing pod. Then, she punched him in the stomach, almost causing Qin Chuan to vomit stomach acid. "Do you still see me as your senior sister?" Zhou Lin grabbed Qin Chuan's collar and said angrily, "Do you know that you almost died?" Zhou Lin didn't want to talk about the situation at that time. If she brought Qin Chuan back an hour later, Qin Chuan would have really died. Even though he was beaten and scolded by Zhou Lin, Qin Chuan wasn't angry at all. Instead, he grinned and said, "Senior sister, I believe that you won't let me die." "You." Zhou Lin was furious. "You're simply a bastard." "Senior sister, I know I was wrong." Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin pitifully and said, "I just came out of the healing pod. You don't want me to lie back down, right?" Zhou Lin snorted and let go of Qin Chuan's collar. She said to Qin Chuan, "How do you feel?" Qin Chuan slightly closed his eyes when he heard this. After a while, he opened them and looked at Zhou Lin with extremely bright eyes. "I feel better than ever." Qin Chuan could clearly feel that his understanding of the world had become clearer. If Qin Chuan's perception of the world in the past was black and white, then now, Qin Chuan's perception of the world was multicolored, more vivid and lively. Those who survive a great disaster are bound to have good fortune. Zhou Lin looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "Don't take risks like this in the future. Once you enter the Black Moon Combat Academy, we'll be at the ends of the world. If you continue courting death, who will save you?" I got it." Qin Chuan grinned and said, "Senior, why don't you give me a test first?" Qin Chuan could not wait to find out how much his brain had developed. Zhou Lin was also looking forward to seeing how much Qin Chuan's strength had increased after this adventure. However, when the results of the test appeared, both Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin were stunned. 69%. Qin Chuan's brain development had not increased at all. Instead, it had regressed by 20%. How is this possible? Qin Chuan was astonished. "I clearly feel that my perception is much stronger than before. Is there a problem with the machine?" Zhou Lin also felt that the machine had malfunctioned. Qin Chuan's perception was so good, so there was no reason for his brain development to have regressed. However, after changing to another test pod, the results were still 69%. There was no change at all. If one machine had malfunctioned, then it could not be that all the machines had malfunctioned, right? "Let me try." Zhou Lin entered the test pod. Soon, the test results appeared. 97%. Accuracy. Looking at the test results, Zhou Lin and Qin Chuan fell into deep thought. There must have been a problem somewhere. "Qin Chuan, attack me." Zhou Lin thought for a moment, then suddenly suggested to Qin Chuan, "Let me try to see if I can suppress you." "Okay." Qin Chuan agreed. Since the test results did not show, why not use actual combat to test it? Qin Chuan did not hold back. He raised his hand and threw a punch at Zhou Lin's face. This punch was heavy and powerful. It was as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it was approaching Zhou Lin. Qin Chuan did not hold back. This was the limit of what he could do now. "Ha!" Zhou Lin raised her hand and easily blocked Qin Chuan's punch. Seeing this, Qin Chuan could not help but feel discouraged. He said unconfidently, "How can this be? I clearly felt that I had become stronger. How can I be suppressed by you so easily? Could it be that my senses were wrong?" "No." Zhou Lin looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "I didn't suppress you just now. I was able to block that punch because of my rich combat experience. It's not because I suppressed your brain." Qin Chuan was stunned. "In other words, you can't suppress my brain?" "Indeed." Zhou Lin was puzzled. Since she could not suppress Qin Chuan with her brain, this meant that Qin Chuan's brain was at least 92% developed. Why was the test result only 69%? Maybe I know why. Suddenly, Qin Chuan's expression turned serious. He looked at Zhou Lin and said, I tried it just now and discovered something special. Zhou Lin was puzzled. She asked, "What's special?" Qin Chuan did not speak. He only opened his palm in front of Zhou Lin. Suddenly, a flash of lightning appeared in Qin Chuan's palm. And this was just the beginning. Gradually, lightning began to flash around Qin Chuan's body. The azure lightning enveloped a 3-meter radius around Qin Chuan's body, forming a spherical domain. What kind of joke is this? Zhou Lin looked at Qin Chuan in shock. She looked as if she had seen a ghost. A little guy who had not even entered the qi refining stage could activate a domain. If this was not a ghost, what was? That feeling of numbness was definitely not an illusion. But soon, the lightning dissipated. Qin Chuan looked slightly tired. He said to Zhou Lin, "This is the limit of what I can do. I can hold on for about 3 seconds. If it only enveloped my body, I might be able to hold on for more than 10 seconds. At this point, Qin Chuan scratched his head and said, "I don't know what this is." "Senior sister, have you seen a domain before?" Qin Chuan vaguely felt that the power he just displayed was similar to a domain. However, he had never seen a domain before and did not know what it was. "I've never seen a domain before, but I've read records. A domain activated by a powerful cultivator can at least cover a radius of 1,000 meters. If this is a domain, then it's probably the one that lasts the shortest and covers the smallest area in the world. But even so, it's amazing." Chapter 64. For a little guy who was only in the body tempering stage, even if he only activated a super mini domain for a few seconds, it was already shocking enough. If news of this got out, even those powerful cultivators who had hidden themselves from the world might be alarmed. This situation is very strange. It doesn't feel like a domain. I feel like it's the manifestation of a brain domain, or rather, a domain that hasn't fully developed yet. Zhou Lin was also very puzzled by Qin Chuan's current situation. She had never seen such a situation before, and there shouldn't be any records of this in the books. Qin Chuan should be the first person to encounter such a situation. But no matter what this is, you can't easily display this ability in front of outsiders. You must keep it a secret. Also, if you can avoid testing your brain development in the future, then try not to test it. Zhou Lin warned Qin Chuan with an extremely serious expression. If news of this kind of domain got out, the impact would be immeasurable. Someone might capture Qin Chuan and slice him up for research. In fact, after stepping into the qi refinement stage, the brain domain was already fixed. There was no way to continue developing it, and no one would be bored enough to test their brain development. Otherwise, Zhou Lin wouldn't have been able to hide her true brain development until now. I know. Qin Chuan also knew that this was a serious matter. He couldn't joke about it. But then again, this super mini domain of mine is really useless. Qin Chuan grinned and said, "If I really used this domain in battle, I would tire myself to death before the opponent even attacked. It's useless now, but in the future, it might become a treasure." Zhou Lin pursed her lips and said, "All right, let's stop talking here today. You should also go and prepare. Later, our special training camp will hold a graduation celebration party. You can't miss it." Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment, then asked, "Graduation celebration party? How many days did I stay in the treatment pod?" 3 days, Zhou Lin replied. "Today is the last day of the special training camp. Tomorrow, this special training camp will graduate and be disbanded." In the evening, when Qin Chuan arrived at the restaurant where the graduation welcome party was held, he was dumbfounded. There were dozens of people in the restaurant, but he was the only one in sportswear. The rest of the men were in suits and ties, while the women were in beautiful evening gowns, each more formal than the other. "Qin Chuan," a voice full of surprise rang out from behind Qin Chuan. Lu Zi quickly walked over and stood beside Qin Chuan. She said, "I only came to take a look. I didn't expect you to really come." Although it had only been 3 days since she last saw Qin Chuan, Lu Zi always felt that something was missing from her side. Now that she could see Qin Chuan again, she was really happy. She had never experienced such emotions before. Qin Chuan smiled bitterly and said to Lu Zi, "I'm wondering if I should go in or not." They're all dressed too formally. Lucy looked at Qinchuan's blue sportswear, pursed her lips, and smiled. She said, "What are you afraid of? I'll accompany you." Originally, Lucy planned to go to the training room for training and didn't plan to attend the party. However, because she was passing by, she stopped by to see if she would meet Qinchuan. She was also wearing loose sportswear, but it was purple. It matched Qinchuan's sportswear quite well. "Let's go." Lucy didn't give Qinchuan a chance to say anything else. She pulled Qinchuan's arm and walked into the restaurant. The arrival of the two of them attracted a lot of attention, especially when they saw that the two of them were wearing similar sportswear. The look in their eyes became even more subtle. The students of the aristocratic school couldn't help but lament in their hearts. The most beautiful flower of their school had finally been plucked by an outsider like Qinchuan. As for the others, they secretly gave Qinchuan a thumbs up to show their admiration for Qinchuan. "Qinchuan, you're graduating tomorrow." Lucy held 2 glasses of red wine and handed one of them to Qinchuan. Her bright eyes looked at Qinchuan with a hint of sadness. She said, "My grandfather has already helped me find a tutor. In the next 6 months, I may leave the state capital of Qing and will only come back for the college entrance examination." This also meant that tonight might be the last time the two of them would see each other for the next 6 months. Qinchuan heard this and smiled. He said, "What a coincidence. I don't plan to study in the school for the next 6 months. I'm also preparing to do something else. It's most likely that I won't be in the state capital of Qing." With Qinchuan's current strength, it would be difficult for the school to teach Qinchuan any useful knowledge. In a few days, Zhou Lin would also return to the Starry Sky Academy. At that time, he would probably embark on a new journey to prepare for the qi refining stage. Regarding the university, are you preparing to... Lucy originally wanted to ask Qinchuan about his college entrance examination aspirations. However, she stopped at this point. Thinking about the relationship between Qinchuan and Zhou Lin, she felt that her question was a waste of time. Other than entering the Starry Sky Academy, where else could Qinchuan go? "Forget it. Let's not talk about this." Lucy took a sip of red wine and asked Qinchuan, "What is the relationship between you and Wang Wenxue now?" Ever since she became friends with Qinchuan, Lucy had always been curious about the relationship between Qinchuan and Wang Wenxue. In the past, she was still hesitating whether to ask or not. However, if she didn't ask now, it would be difficult for her to ask in the future. Hearing Lucy mention Wang Wenxue, Qinchuan subconsciously looked at the crowd not far away. Very quickly, he found Wang Wenxue's figure among the crowd of girls. Wang Wenxue was wearing a very beautiful black evening gown. It set off her snow-like skin and made her look even fairer and more delicate. She was beautiful and moving. "I'm not sure, but we should be classmates." Qinchuan seriously thought for a moment. The most suitable relationship between him and Wang Wenxue should be classmates. After all, they were both students of the second middle school. It wouldn't be too much to say that they were classmates. Hearing Qinchuan's answer, Lucy's mouth slightly rose and said, "This answer, I actually guessed it." Because of drinking some wine, Lucy's cheeks quietly appeared a touch of red. She looked at Qinchuan deeply and said in her heart, "Some people can't see the shining point on you, but I can see it." The lively graduation celebration party lasted until 10 o'clock in the evening. Tomorrow morning, they would go their separate ways and make full preparations for the upcoming college entrance examination in half a year. The next time they would meet again, who knows when it would be. Qinchuan felt that it was necessary to solve the matter of Heicheng before starting a new cultivation journey. Chapter 65. Qinchuan once agreed with the city lord mansion to visit within 5 days. Now that 3 days had passed, there was no need to deliberately delay until the last day. Early the next morning, Qinchuan didn't say goodbye to anyone. He went straight out of the special training camp with a small amount of luggage and prepared to go to Black City. He didn't communicate with Zhou Lin about this matter because he didn't want to live under Zhou Lin's shelter. One day, he would have to face everything by himself. Moreover, he didn't want to implicate Zhou Lin. In case the city lore mansion set up a banquet, Wouldn't he be harming others and himself if he asked Zhou Lin to go with him? After verifying his identity, Qin Chuan walked out of the door, then looked back at the door that was about to close and whispered, "Just think of it as my male chauvinism causing mischief." Qin Chuan took the crystal train and went straight to Qingyang Road. It was broad daylight and early in the morning. Other than the people who lived in the Black City all year round, outsiders rarely entered the Black City at this time. Therefore, when Qin Chuan took the elevator to the Black City, there were only a few dozen figures moving about on the wide streets of the Black City. Compared to the bustling night, it was much more deserted. When Qin Chuan walked out of the elevator, the two guards of Black City who were guarding the elevator immediately respectfully said to Qin Chuan, "Young Master Qin, the city lord has been waiting for you for a long time. We have arranged a ride and can set off to the city lord mansion at any time." Since the agreement with Qin Chuan, Chu Hua sent people to guard here, waiting for the arrival of Qin Chuan. Now, Qin Chuan finally arrived. Qin Chuan nodded gently and didn't refuse. Being able to take the shuttle directly to the City Lord Mansion was naturally much faster and more comfortable than walking. Riding the luxurious shuttle used by Black City to welcome VIPs, Qin Chuan arrived at the parking area at the top of the City Lord Mansion in less than 2 minutes. Chu Ning, who was dressed in a moon-white uniform, was already waiting by the side, ready to welcome Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan had just stepped out of the flying shuttle when Chu Ning greeted him with a smile. He said to Qin Chuan, "On behalf of the City Lord's mansion, I welcome young Master Qin's visit." Qin Chuan waved his hand and said, "I'm just an ordinary person. I'm not used to being called young master. Just call me Qin Chuan. You don't have to say you. Just you, all right?" Qin Chuan really didn't like being addressed as young master. It was more comfortable to just call him by his name. Chu Ning readily agreed and smiled at Qin Chuan. "Please follow me. The city lord is waiting for you in the reception hall." Although Qin Chuan had been to Black City many times, it was the first time he was in close contact with the city lord's mansion. He followed behind Chu Ning and took the elevator to slowly move down. On the way, he could overlook the scenery of the entire Black City through the transparent walls. It was very enjoyable. These walls are made of a special dark crystal material. From the inside, you can clearly see the outside. But from the outside, it's dark and you can't see anything. If you like, the City Lord Mansion has some. I can give you as a gift. It's also very good to decorate the study room or the cultivation room. Chu Ning was very good at observing people's expressions. When she found out that Qin Chuan was curious about these dark crystal walls, she immediately explained to Qin Chuan with a smile. As long as Qin Chuan liked it, she could immediately offer the dark crystals in the City Lord's Mansion's inventory. "That's not necessary." Qin Chuan shook his head and declined Chu Ning's kindness. His dilapidated house really didn't match this kind of high-grade material. If he forcibly installed these things, it would only look out of place. Along the way, Chu Ning's performance made Qin Chuan feel like he was bathed in a spring breeze. It was very useful. While the two were talking and laughing, they finally arrived at the reception hall. At this time, Chu Hua was sitting on the sofa, waiting for Qin Chuan's arrival. Seeing Chu Ning leading Qin Chuan into the door, Chu Hua slowly got up and smiled at Qin Chuan. "When I heard about the Battle of the Hidden Dragon Arena, I wanted to make friends with a young hero like young Master Qin. I didn't expect to have the opportunity to meet young Master Qin until now. It's really a pity. I'm Chu Hua, the City Lord of Black City." Qin Chuan grinned and said, "My name is Qin Chuan, not young Master Qin." "Haha. Well, then I'll call you Qin Chuan. You don't have to call me City Lord. Ning is my daughter. She's about the same age as you. If you don't mind, you can call me Uncle Chu." Chu Hua laughed. His performance was extremely magnanimous and free. It was very different from the gloomy temperament of the City Lord of Black City that Qin Chuan imagined. Chu Hua asked Qin Chuan to sit down. Chu Ning poured tea for the two people. Chu Hua introduced to Qin Chuan. "This is our Black City's unique black tea. It has a mellow taste and a unique taste. Try it." Qin Chuan picked up the teacup and drank more than half of the cup in one gulp. Then he smacked his lips and said, "To tell the truth, I'm just a poor boy from the slums. I couldn't afford to drink tea before, and I don't know how to taste tea. I can't taste the unique taste of this thing. If I hadn't had a fortuitous encounter, I wouldn't be qualified to sit in front of Uncle Chu today. Let's get straight to the point. Don't be so polite. Let's get to the point. Qingchuan was really not used to this kind of occasion. He didn't know how to be polite, so he simply said the topic to save his energy. If they could talk, then they would continue to talk. If they couldn't talk, then it was fine to break up or fight. He could accept it. Since nephew said so, then I won't beat around the bush. Chu Hua put down the teacup and looked at Qingchuan deeply. He said, I want to see your grandfather. Qingchuan shook his head and replied, Sorry, this is impossible. It's not that I don't want Uncle Chu to see my grandfather, but even I can't see my grandfather. Chu Hua frowned slightly and said to Qingchuan, Didn't your grandfather leave you any contact information? There's no contact information, but there is such a thing. Qingchuan took out an emblem with a black moon engraved on it from his shirt pocket and said to Chu Hua, My grandfather gave this to me before he left. He said that after activating this emblem in half a year, someone will naturally come and take me to where I need to go. Looking at the emblem that Qingchuan had placed on the table, Chu Hua recognized it at a glance. This was the emblem of the Black Moon Combat Academy of the 6 Great Academies. Only people from the Black Moon Combat Academy possessed such an emblem. Qingchuan's grandfather had given Qingchuan this emblem before he left. Could it be that Qingchuan's grandfather was from the Black Moon Combat Academy? The Black Moon Combat Academy had always been famous for its talisman arrays. It was not surprising that there was a grade 4 talisman array master there. In fact, it was very normal. If that's the case, then even if your grandfather appears again, it might be in half a year. Chu Hua's expression was somewhat ugly. Although he had already guessed this result, it was still difficult for him to accept it when he actually faced it. Chapter 66. When he saw Chu Hua's expression change, Qingchuan couldn't help but become nervous. Even though it wasn't suitable to provoke Chu Hua under such circumstances, there were some things that Qingchuan had no choice but to brace himself and say, Actually, I might not be able to see my grandfather in half a year. Qingchuan pursed his lips and said, I don't know when I'll be able to see my grandfather again. It might be half a year later, or a year later, or even longer. Qingchuan swore that his grandfather would absolutely not show himself before he fully matured. Chu Hua's expression changed again and again when he heard this. His expression could be said to be gloomy to the extreme. He really hated this feeling of not being able to get what he wanted. If he knew Qingchuan's grandfather was so elusive, he would have directly given the order to stop him. Even though doing so would have the risk of angering him, it was still better than this situation where it was difficult to even meet him. Chu Hua remained silent, while Chu Ning stood silently at the side. The atmosphere in the room couldn't help but become strange and heavy. Qingchuan felt that he had to do something to prevent Chu Hua from doing something irrational. Uncle Chu, the reason you want to see my grandfather is because of the spirit absorption and spirit injection talisman matrices, right? Qingchuan looked at Chu Hua with a slightly curious gaze and said, Uncle Chu wants to borrow my grandfather's strength to inscribe these 2 talisman matrices. Chu Hua, who was in a bad mood, raised his eyes and glanced at Qingchuan. He wasn't surprised that Qingchuan was able to guess his thoughts. What else could a person look for a talisman formation master for besides asking for help in inscribing talisman matrices? Exactly. I'm looking for your grandfather precisely to inscribe the spirit absorption and spirit injection talisman matrices. These 2 talisman matrices are extremely important to me. I originally thought that I would be able to attract some formidable talisman formation masters by spreading the news. I never expected that your grandfather would recognize these 2 talisman matrices, but he seems to have no interest in them at all. At this point, Chu Hua looked at Qingchuan with curiosity. He wanted to know if Qingchuan's grandfather had already mastered the method of inscribing these 2 talisman arrays, so he wasn't interested in them at all. As far as I know, my grandfather has always had a hobby of collecting all kinds of rare talisman arrays. Uncle Chu, the news of these 2 talisman arrays did not arouse my grandfather's curiosity. This means that my grandfather should have the inscription method of these 2 talisman arrays in his hands. Qinchuan definitely didn't know how to inscribe the spirit receiving glyph array and the spirit injection glyph array, but he could only brace himself and explain. After all, this was the most reasonable answer that Chu Hua could accept. As expected, Chu Hua pondered for a moment, then let out a long sigh and said, "Looks like I'm just unlucky. Encountering a formidable talisman formation master that recognized the spirit receiving glyph array and the spirit injection glyph array just so happened to possess the method of inscribing these 2 talisman arrays and wasn't interested in them. If this wasn't unlucky, then what was? Actually, Uncle Chu, you can try looking for other talisman formation masters. My grandfather isn't interested, but it doesn't mean that others aren't interested as well." Qinchuan thought about it over and over again, and in the end, he decided to take the risk and give Chu Hua a small suggestion. There are so many talisman formation masters in the world, so why insist on hanging on a single tree? If Chu Hua accepted his suggestion and really went to look for other talisman formation masters, then Qinchuan would surely be extremely happy, because in this way, Chu Hua would probably stop staring at him, and only in this way would he be able to live a slightly more comfortable life in the future. The matter isn't as simple as you think. Chu Hua shook his head and said with slight helplessness, "I obtained these 2 talisman arrays from a Rune, and they're talisman arrays from the period of great chaos. Presently, their inheritance has already been lost. It's not exaggerated to say that there shouldn't be more than 10 people in the entire Federation that possess the method of inscribing these 2 talisman arrays. Moreover, I'm the person with the weakest strength amongst these 10 people." Chu Hua glanced deeply at Qinchuan and said, "If someone with ulterior motives were to find out that I possess the method of inscribing these 2 talisman arrays, then what do you think would happen to me?" Qinchuan's expression instantly became slightly stiff when he heard this. If it wasn't for him being afraid of Chu Hua's strength, he would truly wish for nothing more than to curse Chu Hua. You're clearly fucking aware of the value of these 2 talisman arrays, yet you still casually posted them outside. Aren't you afraid that you'll encounter someone with ulterior motives if you announce it so openly? Moreover, what do you mean by telling me all of this now? Are you telling me this secret and then dragging me onto your pirate ship? Ahem, Uncle Chu, I think it's getting late, and I have an appointment with a friend for dinner. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." Qinchuan coughed lightly and forced a smile at Chu Hua. He really didn't want to be on this pirate ship at all. If he couldn't afford to offend him, then he could just hide. Hearing that Qinchuan was about to leave, Chu Hua's eyes suddenly turned cold as he looked at Qinchuan. He said in a deep voice, "You've just heard my secret, and you're already in such a hurry to leave? I can swear that I'll never tell anyone what I've heard today." Qinchuan was somewhat speechless. He wasn't the one who forced Chu Hua to reveal these secrets. This cheap uncle of his really didn't do things properly. Wasn't this cheating him? You don't have to swear. Between us uncle and nephew, there's still some basic trust. The gloomy expression on Chu Hua's face suddenly vanished and was replaced with a smile. He looked at Qinchuan with a smile and said, "Not only will I not hurt you, but I also want to make a deal with you and give you wealth." Hearing that Chu Hua wanted to make a deal with him, the expression on Qinchuan's face immediately became vigilant. He looked at Chu Hua with fear in his eyes and said, "Uncle Chu, I'm just a kid at the qi refining stage. I don't think I have anything worth trading with you, right? You're a genius who will definitely become a talisman array master in the future. With such amazing potential, isn't it worth my investment?" Chu Hua looked at Qinchuan with a subtle expression and said to Qinchuan, "To tell you the truth, I've investigated you before and know that you're lacking in cultivation resources. And I have all of that. As long as you want it, I can provide you with any cultivation resources. And I only have one condition. Find your grandfather within 2 years and help me ask him to inscribe a spirit-receiving talisman array and a spirit-injecting talisman array. It's that simple. And if your grandfather doesn't appear within 2 years, I won't blame you and will absolutely not make trouble for you. At the same time, I won't take back those cultivation resources. What do you think?" When he heard Chu Hua's conditions, Qin Chuan was completely dumbfounded. Such generous conditions. Are you sure you're not digging a hole for me to jump into? Chapter 67. Walking out of the city lord mansion, Qin Chuan looked back at the tower behind him. His eyes were extremely complicated. He didn't expect that he would still board Chu Hua's pirate ship in the end. Chu Hua offered such generous conditions. It was clear that he wanted him to agree. If he dared to refuse, God knows what kind of crazy things Chu Hua would do. So he had no choice but to board this pirate ship. That was very unbearable. Qin Chuan sighed. He lowered his head and walked toward Zhou Lin, who was standing not far away. He stood beside Zhou Lin and whispered, "Senior, why are you here?" Originally, Chu Hua intended to let Qin Chuan leave directly by the shuttle, but Zhou Lin happened to appear outside the city lord mansion at this time. So Qin Chuan changed his itinerary and went downstairs to see Zhou Lin. "I knew you sneaked away alone. You must have come here." Zhou Lin looked up and down at Qin Chuan. After confirming that Qin Chuan wasn't injured, she was relieved. "It seems that you have suffered a little loss, but it's good that you're still alive." After getting up in the morning, Zhou Lin didn't find Qin Chuan in the special training camp. She knew that Qin Chuan must have gone to the appointment alone, so she quickly came here. Although she couldn't help, she must see Qin Chuan walk out of the city lord mansion safe and sound. "I don't know if this is a loss or not." Qin Chuan sighed and gritted his teeth. God knows that old thing actually released such a precious thing casually. If he knew that the spiritual talisman array and spiritual talisman array were so expensive, Qin Chuan wouldn't have been greedy for that little bit of money. As expected, poverty stunts ambition. If it were a rich second generation, they would definitely not be interested in the 500,000 yuan gift. In the end, it was still because of poverty. "Let's go." Zhou Lin and Qin Chuan walked side by side towards the outside of Black City. Zhou Lin didn't ask about what happened in the city lord mansion. If Qin Chuan was willing to talk about it, he would naturally take the initiative to tell her. In the city lord's mansion, Chu Hua stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window as he watched Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin's figures disappear into the distance. After a long time, he faintly sighed and said to Chu Ning, who was standing at the side, "This kid's future is limitless. A genius that'll surely become a talisman formation master, so his future is naturally good." Chu Ning smiled lightly and said, "But no matter how good his future is, he'll be unable to escape father's plans." "No, you've misunderstood. When I said that this kid's future is limitless, it's not only because of his talent, but also because of the girl beside him, Zhou Lin." Chu Hua gazed deeply at Zhou Lin's back and said to Chu Ning, "Zhou Lin is a heaven's pride of Starry Sky Academy. Her brain development is 94%. If she doesn't die in the future, there's a great possibility that she'll grow into a powerful existence like a powerful cultivator." Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin are acquainted at this age, and their friendship isn't shallow. What does this mean? It means that Qin Chuan's body must have some special characteristics that attract Zhou Lin. You have to know that more than a month ago, Qin Chuan was just a poor kid from the slums. But in this short 1 month's time, what did he do? Encountering a 4th-level talisman formation master as a disciple, becoming close friends with a heaven's pride like Zhou Lin, shocking the world with a lightning talisman formation during the battle of the Hidden Dragon Arena. No matter which one of these things happened to a single person, it would be shocking enough. But all of these things happened to Qin Chuan. All of this shows one thing, that is, Qin Chuan is a person with great luck. Chu Hua asserted with incomparable certainty. As long as Qin Chuan doesn't die, then his future achievements are bound to be limitless. If we invest more in him now, we'll definitely have great gains in the future. At that time, even if I can't kill the enemy and avenge your mother, I'll have to ask Qin Chuan to help us father and daughter settle the grudge of that year. So no matter whether Qin Chuan's grandfather will help us or not, we have to make friends with Qin Chuan." Hearing Chu Hua's words, Chu Ning's eyes couldn't help but redden. She sobbed in a low voice, "Mom." After leaving Black City, Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin didn't take any means of transportation. They just walked aimlessly on the street. This kind of silence lasted for a while. Qin Chuan took out a bottle of milky white reagent from his pocket and handed it to Zhou Lin, saying, "Senior sister, this is for you." Zhou Lin looked at the reagent handed over by Qin Chuan. Her eyes slightly changed, saying, "This is Foundation Elixir?" Foundation Elixir can help a 13th level refinement stage cultivator to cross the realm barrier and advance to the foundation building stage. The whiter the color, the more precious it is. The bottle in Qin Chuan's hand was milky white. The quality is obviously the best. It's absolutely impossible for Qin Chuan to take out such a priceless thing. Recalling that Qin Chuan just left Black City's City Lord's mansion, Zhou Lin couldn't help but slightly frown, asking, "What did the City Lord's mansion trade with you with this thing?" "Trade with my future." Qin Chuan grinned, saying, "They think my talent is amazing, so they want to invest in me. They hope that I can help them do one thing after I grow up. Even if I can't do it, they won't blame me. Do you think I can refuse?" "Can't refuse. If you refuse, you will die." Qin Chuan didn't say it clearly, but Zhou Lin already understood the meaning. She deeply looked at the foundation elixir in Qin Chuan's hand, pursed her lips, and said, "This thing, you exchanged it for me?" "Yes." Qin Chuan frankly nodded, saying, "I originally wanted to ask for more, but who knew that this City Lord's mansion is so poor? They only have one bottle of foundation elixir. I can only reluctantly accept it. I haven't even reached the refinement stage yet, so I don't need this thing. I'll give it to you first. When I need it in the future, you can help me get another bottle." Zhou Lin reached out her hand and took the foundation elixir from Qin Chuan's hand. She looked at the clear, milky white liquid in the bottle and said in a low voice, "Foundation elixir is extremely precious. It's basically in the hands of the world sections. It's very rare for it to leak out. It's easy to get 1,000 gold coins, but foundation elixir is hard to find. I can tell you very clearly that when you need foundation elixir, even if I risk my life, it'll be very difficult to get a bottle of foundation elixir of the same quality for you. Are you sure you want to give such a precious thing to me?" Qin Chuan lightly raised his eyebrows and said, "Senior sister, when did you become so long-winded?" Zhou Lin suddenly laughed. She carefully put away the foundation elixir and said to Qin Chuan, "Let's go, we'll walk around. You gave me the foundation elixir, so it's time to talk to me about what happened in the City Lord's mansion." Qin Chuan grinned and said, "I also have the same intention." On the cold street, a young man and a young woman walked side by side. The warm sunlight shined on their bodies, as if they were draped in a layer of golden gauze, warm and beautiful. Chapter 68. It was the 3rd month of spring, and the scenery was just right. A young man wearing a self-woven straw hat was lying leisurely on a large blue stone in the forest. The sun shone through the layers of leaves on the young man's body, warm and comfortable, helping him to have a good dream. Suddenly, a burst of noise came from not far away, and it woke up the young man who was taking an afternoon nap. He stood up from the large green rock and looked in the direction of the noise, and he muttered to himself in a low voice, "Where did this idiot come from?" He came to this cloud dragon mountain and wandered around blindly. As he spoke, the young man had already jumped down from the bluestone. He quickly ran in the direction of the noise. In a short while, he arrived at the scene of the noise. In an open space, 5 young men and women in combat uniforms were surrounded by a pack of green wolves. Both sides were in a tense standoff. The 3 young men carefully protected the 2 young women behind them, as if they were afraid that they would be hurt in the slightest. "What should we do? There are so many green wolves. We are no match for them." The slightly fat young man was already covered in cold sweat. If he had known that the Cloud Dragon Mountain was so dangerous, he would not have come no matter what. "Kill our way out." Another thin young man gritted his teeth and said, "We have no way out now. We have to kill our way out. Otherwise, we can only die here." "I don't want to die." A delicate girl who was protected in the middle turned pale and said in a low voice, "I won't be naughty anymore. I want to go home." Hearing the girl's sobbing voice, the others' faces also became a little ugly. If they could go home, who wouldn't want to go home? What was the use of crying now? Finding a way to kill their way out was the most important thing. "Wait, look over there." There seems to be a person there. Suddenly, another girl cried out in a low voice. She pointed at the big tree beside her and said loudly, "Hey, save us!" Following the girl's cry, the green wolves, who had been unable to hold back for a long time, no longer hesitated. They roared and charged toward the young men and women who had nowhere to run. The straw hat young man, hiding in the forest, looked at the girl who had cried out in alarm and shook his head speechlessly. What a bunch of lunatics. Why did they come to this mountain forest for no reason? Mumbling to himself, the youth in the straw hat suddenly jumped down from the tree. With a leap, he arrived at the back of the pack of green wolves. The blade in his hand fell, and in the blink of an eye, he finished off a green wolf. The leader of the green wolves, who was in the middle of commanding the group of ignorant youths, sensed the change behind him and immediately howled. The original group instantly split into two. One group continued to surround the prey that was about to fall into their hands, while the other went to deal with the trouble behind them. However, something unexpected happened. The dozen or so green wolves it sent to deal with the trouble behind it were all killed by the youth in the straw hat in a short period of time. Looking at their fellow tribesmen lying in a pool of blood and wailing in pain, the leader of the green wolves couldn't help but reveal a human-like rage. If it wasn't for this straw hat youth suddenly jumping out and disrupting the situation, they would definitely be able to completely slaughter this group of foolish humans. Oh, whoa. The leader of the green wolves suddenly raised his head and howled. Soon, the remaining green wolves slowly retreated, gradually disappearing into the forest without a trace. The fat youth covered in wounds saw the green wolves retreat, and his eyes suddenly shone with an unprecedented bright light. He shouted excitedly, "We won! We defeated those!" The fat youth was cheering, but suddenly realized that his companions were all silent. His cheers also stopped abruptly. Even with the 5 of us working together, we only managed to kill 2 green wolves. The skinny youth looked at the straw hat youth standing not far away with a burning gaze. He said to his companion in a low voice, "But he alone killed 12 green wolves in the same amount of time. A total of 12. Could he be a chi refining stage cultivator?" The tall and strong youth looked curiously at the straw hat youth and said to his companions, "Let's go and say hello to him." Hello. The tall youth smiled at the straw hat youth and said, "My name is Gao Jinyu. We are all third-year high school students from Xi'an City's elite academy. What about you?" The youth in the straw hat glanced at Gao Jinyu indifferently before turning his gaze to the young girl who had pointed at him and cried out in alarm. His tone was indifferent as he said, "If it wasn't for my skills when she pointed at me just now, I might have died under the siege of these green wolves." Hearing the straw hat youth's words, the group of students from Xi'an City suddenly had an awkward expression on their faces. Because the straw hat youth was right, the girl's exclamation had indeed exposed the straw hat youth's tracks. If the straw hat youth was just a normal person, then the girl's actions were equivalent to indirectly murdering the straw hat youth. "Hey, what do you mean?" The girl who was criticized by the straw hat youth couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "Don't think that just because you saved me, you can casually criticize me. Manny, don't say any more." Gao Jinyu frowned and looked unhappily at Li Manny. Then he smiled at the straw hat youth and said, "Manny has little experience and doesn't know any better. I apologize to you on her behalf. I'm really sorry. Why should I lower my head to him?" Li Manny muttered unhappily. "Anyway, the green wolves have retreated, and there's no danger." Hearing Li Manny's muttering, everyone frowned. Li Manny's actions were really a little disdainful. "You think there's no danger?" The straw hat youth suddenly smiled strangely. "If you continue to stay here, I dare to guarantee that in less than 3 minutes, there will be ferocious beasts that will kill all of you." As he spoke, the straw hat youth had already turned and walked back the way he came. He hadn't slept enough and was preparing to go back and sleep again. When everyone heard the straw hat youth's reminder, their expressions couldn't help but change greatly. More than a dozen green wolves had just died here, and the smell of blood was very strong. In this dangerous cloud dragon mountain, they might really attract some extraordinary fierce beasts. "What should we do?" Li Manny, who was still arrogant a moment ago, suddenly panicked and looked at her companions with an uneasy expression. Gao Jinyu frowned slightly and said to everyone, "Let's go, we'll follow them. We're not familiar with anything here, so it's better to follow the Straw Hat Youth." Speaking until here, Gao Jinyu turned his head and glared fiercely at Li Mani, saying, "If you dare to talk nonsense again, don't blame us for abandoning you." Being warned by Gao Jinyu in such a strict manner, Li Mani's eyes immediately turned red with grievance. Although she was dissatisfied in her heart, she didn't dare to act out. She was afraid that she would really be abandoned in the wilderness. At that time, it would be too late for her to regret. Chapter 69. Gao Jinyu and the others were not familiar with the environment of the mountain forest, so their running speed was inevitably a little slow. Fortunately, the youth in the straw hat was not very fast, so they were barely able to keep up. After running for more than 10 minutes, the youth in the straw hat finally stopped in front of a large blue stone. He jumped onto the blue stone and lay down, preparing to sleep. Gao Jinyu and the others came near the blue stone and looked at the youth in the straw hat lying on the blue stone with a strange expression. They had been in the Cloud Dragon Mountain for a few days, and they always took turns to rest at night. Moreover, they did not dare to sleep too deeply for fear of encountering danger. But this youth in front of them, not only was he walking alone in the mountain forest, he even dared to lie down and sleep openly on the blue stone. He was simply too arrogant. TSK, I think he's just deliberately mystifying. Li Mani looked at the side of the youth in the straw hat and muttered to the other girl in a low voice, "Kair, I'm sure this guy is just pretending for us to see. Do you believe me?" Yukai lightly shook her head and said, "I think he's very real. You're just inexperienced." Li Mani curled her lips and walked to the stream beside the blue stone. She scooped up some water and began to wash her cheeks and hands. Seeing Li Mani's actions, everyone felt a little thirsty, so they all walked to the stream and squatted down to drink water and wash up. "Wang Ying, what do you think of this person?" Gao Jinyu washed his face and said to the skinny youth, "Should we follow him or pay him to send us away?" The 5 of them had been in the Cloud Dragon Mountain for 3 days, and they had already lost their way. They did not know how to leave at all. Wandering around in the mountain forest was really a dangerous thing. Now, they could only ask for help from someone who was familiar with the terrain, and the youth in the straw hat was the most suitable. Firstly, the youth in the straw hat had some strength and could protect them. Secondly, the youth in the straw hat was about the same age as them and should be easier to get along with. Wang Ying pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Manny did not leave a good impression on him. From his current behavior, he clearly does not want to pay attention to us. That's a problem." Gao Jinyu felt a little helpless. He glanced at the chubby boy who was smiling around Li Mani and whispered, "If I had known Li Mani's character was like this, I wouldn't have listened to Guixing and brought her along." "Forget it. It's too late to talk about this now." Gao Jinyu shook his head. He stood up and walked towards the large blue stone. He stood beside the blue stone and looked at the youth in the straw hat. He asked, "Brother, don't be so cold. How about we have a chat?" When the people by the stream saw Gao Jinyu greet the straw hat youth again, they all had looks of anticipation on their faces. If the straw hat youth was willing to accept them, perhaps their lives would be much better in the future. "Don't call me brother. We don't know each other that well," the straw hat boy said to Gao Jinyu. "I have a name. Just call me Qin Chuan." Qin Chuan? Hearing this name, Gao Jinyu felt a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it before. So he smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "We want you to help send us out of this Cloud Dragon Mountain. Are you willing? We can pay you." "Pay?" Qin Chuan took off the straw hat covering his face and looked at Gao Jinyu with playful eyes. He said, "I have been in this Cloud Dragon Mountain for almost 3 months, and I still lack a woman to serve me." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Gao Jinyu's expression changed slightly. He forced a smile and said, "Brother, this joke is not funny." Qin Chuan nodded and said, "I don't think it's funny either, so I think some people need to apologize to me. Otherwise, why should I care about you?" Gao Jinyu understood that Qin Chuan was not unwilling to help them. As long as Li Mani bowed her head and admitted her mistake, everything could be discussed. However, Li Mani was a barrel of gunpowder. It was harder to make her bow her head and admit her mistake than to kill her. For a moment, Gao Jinyu couldn't help but have a headache. What? You have to apologize to him. Why? Li Mani stared at Gao Jinyu with wide eyes and said firmly, "Whoever asks him to go can go. Anyway, I'm not going. Even if I die in this forest, I will never bow my head to him." Hearing Li Mani's words, Gao Jinyu looked helpless. He knew that he would not get a good result from discussing with Li Mani. "Li Mani, you caused the trouble. If you don't apologize, do you want us to go?" Wang Ying looked at Li Mani coldly and said, "If the other party is willing to accept my apology, I have no problem at all. Moreover, if you don't want to bow your head and apologize, can you take us out of this cloud dragon mountain?" "Wang Ying, what do you mean?" Guoxing looked at Wang Ying with some dissatisfaction and said, "Mani is a girl after all. She is thin-skinned. If she doesn't want to apologize, then forget it. At worst, we won't beg him and we'll walk out by ourselves." "Walk out by ourselves?" Wang Ying sneered. "Do you know the way, or do I know the way? Previously, we encountered a pack of green wolves because we went the wrong way. Qin Chuan saved us, and we survived. What about the next time?" Guoxing was choked by Wang Ying's words. He was embarrassed and speechless. Indeed, with their ability, it would be difficult for them to get out of this cloud dragon mountain. Unfortunately, the signal of the optical computer they carried with them was blocked in this cloud dragon mountain. Otherwise, they could directly contact their families and ask someone to come and pick them up. "Everyone, stop arguing." Yukai looked at the people who were arguing more and more fiercely and said in a low voice, "Otherwise, let me talk to him." Hearing Yukai-er's words, Gao Jinyu coldly snorted and said, "If someone was as considerate as you, Kerr, we wouldn't have quarreled." Everyone knew who Gao Jinyu's words were directed at. Li Mani was about to get angry, but she was stopped by Guoxing. It was a good thing that someone came forward for them. If they quarreled and Yukai was unwilling to help them, then they would be in big trouble. Yukai slowly walked to the blue stone, looked at Qin Chuan lying on it, and said in a low voice, "That I'm sorry." Hearing this soft apology, Qin Chuan couldn't help but turn to look at Yukai and sneered, "What? Are you here to be a scapegoat?" Yukai shook her head and said to Qin Chuan, "I know Mani made you unhappy, but she didn't mean it. She's just like that. I hope you can forgive her and let her go for the time being. As long as you are willing to help us this time, I'm willing to give you this as a thank you gift in return." While speaking, Yukai took out a shiny blue stone from her bag and put it in front of Qin Chuan. Chapter 70. Looking at the stone in front of him that contained the power of thunder, the expression on Qin Chuan's face suddenly became serious. "This is a thunder spirit stone. The spirit of heaven and earth could turn into strange stones, which were called spirit stones. They were essential for a practitioner's cultivation. Most of the spirit stones had no attributes and were clean and pure. Spirit stones that contained attributes were extremely rare, and each of them was extremely precious. Although the thunder spirit stone that Yukai took out was only the size of a thumb, it could be exchanged for at least 100 ordinary spirit stones, and there would be a lot of people who would be willing to exchange it with you. From this, it could be seen how precious spirit stones with attributes were. However, only the better quality spirit stones were rare. As for the ordinary spirit stones that Yukai took out, they were not so valuable. But for Qin Chuan, they were still very valuable. During this period of time, Qin Chuan had been wandering around the Cloud Dragon Mountain, looking for an opportunity to break through. And this thunder spirit stone in front of him finally let him know what he was looking for. "Yes, it's a thunder spirit stone. I saw that when you were fighting with Green Wolf, you stimulated the power of thunder. I think you should need this thunder spirit stone very much." Yukai nodded and said to Qin Chuan, "We found it together in the Cloud Dragon Mountain. If you are willing to protect us out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain, I can tell you where I found this thunder spirit stone." Qin Chuan's eyes lit up when he heard this, but soon he calmed down and said in a deep voice, "This thunder spirit stone is extremely precious. You have no reason to give me such a good thing." Qin Chuan never believed that a pie would fall from the sky. Yukai must have a deep meaning for giving him such a big gift. In fact, there's nothing that can't be said. Yukai looked at Qin Chuan with subtle eyes and said, "The place where we found this thunder spirit stone was occupied by 2 thunder beasts. According to my observation, these 2 thunder beasts are at least as strong as fierce beasts. We are no match for them at all. Probably only you have the strength to snatch more thunder spirit stones from these 2 thunder beasts. Moreover, my talent rune is of the wind attribute. This thunder spirit stone is of little value to me. It's useless to keep it. It's better to exchange it for a chance to live." Qin Chuan looked at the breeze that Yukai casually summoned. He was somewhat surprised. He didn't expect Yukai to have also activated her innate rune. Previously, when he saw Yukai crying under the encirclement of the green wolves, he thought that she was very weak. So it's the thunder spirit stones that accompany thunder beasts. I thought you guys had discovered a spirit stone vein. Hearing Yukai's explanation, Qin Chuan let down his guard. Wherever there were thunder beasts, there would inevitably be some thunder spirit stones, but the number would not be too much. At most, there would only be a dozen of them. For these rich kids who were not thunder cultivators, they were not that important. It was reasonable that Yukai would use this as a condition in exchange for his protection. "It seems that you intend to make this exchange?" Yukai looked at Qin Chuan with a smile and said, "We can accompany you to the place where the thunder beasts reside first. After you confirm that there is no mistake, you can send us away." Qin Chuan looked deeply at Yukai and said, "Well, it's settled. But you go back and tell that woman that she'd better not provoke me again." "I'll remember." Yukai suddenly stretched out her pinky to Qin Chuan and said, "Let's make a pinky promise." Qin Chuan looked at the sparkling pinky and was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head and said, "I always keep my promises. Let's not make a pinky promise." This woman was obviously very shrewd when she was talking, but now she had turned into a silly girl. It was really strange. Since the end of the special training camp, Qin Chuan bid farewell to Zhou Lin and went deep into the Cloud Dragon Mountain to gain experience. He didn't intend to leave until he stepped into the Qi refining stage. Because of the changes in his brain, Qin Chuan didn't know to what extent his brain had developed. He could only cultivate diligently every day. As for whether he could reach the perfect state in the end, Qin Chuan didn't dare to guarantee. However, Qin Chuan was also optimistic. As long as he worked hard, even if he couldn't reach the perfect state in the end, he wouldn't have any regrets. Now, 3 months had passed. In 2 months, the half-year deadline given by Ningyu would be up. He must reach the Qi refining stage before then. Originally, he didn't have any clue about this, but the appearance of the Thunder Spirit Stone made Qin Chuan see the next path. Things like Spirit Stones were generally used by Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators for cultivation. Not to mention body refining stage cultivators like Qin Chuan. Even Qi refining stage cultivators rarely used Spirit Stones for cultivation. There was no other reason. There was no need for it. It would be a waste to use it. Others didn't use Spirit Stones because they had other cultivation resources available, but Qin Chuan was different. He was poor, so he used whatever cultivation resources he had at hand. He was never picky. The appearance of the Thunder Spirit Stone could be said to be the rain after a drought for Qin Chuan. With his Thunder attribute talisman, if he cultivated with the Thunder Spirit Stone, he would certainly be able to reach the Qi refining stage in a short period of time. Therefore, no matter what, he must get all the Thunder Spirit Stones associated with the Thunder Beasts. After negotiating the conditions with Qin Chuan, Yukai returned to her companions and told them what had happened. When they learned that Yukai had made a deal with Qin Chuan based on the location of the Thunder Beast, they didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. After all, with their wealth, they didn't lack cultivation resources and didn't need Thunder Spirit Stones. Using such a condition that was of little value to them in exchange for Qin Chuan's help was definitely worth it. "You're really worthy of Kai. Why didn't we think of using the Thunder Beast to make a deal with Qin Chuan?" Gao Jinyu praised Yukai with a smile. They had all noticed that Qin Chuan had stimulated the power of thunder during the battle with the Green Wolf, But no one thought of using the Thunder Beast as a condition in exchange for Qinchuan's help. Fortunately, Yukai was there, otherwise, they really didn't know what to do. Those two Thunder Beasts have the strength of ominous beasts. Can he do it alone? Wang Ying frowned slightly and said, "What if he asks us to help him lure the Thunder Beasts away? What should we do then?" Hearing Wang Ying's words, Guoxing replied, "Kair only said that we would use the Thunder Beast location as a condition of the deal. She didn't say that we would help him obtain the Thunder Spirit Stones. If he dares to force us at that time, I don't believe that the five of us can't do anything to him." Guoxing is right. Li Mani also agreed with Guoxing's words. She really didn't believe that Qinchuan would be a match for the five of them. He's not such a person. Yukai shook her head and said, "I believe that Qinchuan is a good person. Well, before anything happens, it's not a problem for us to make some preparations in advance." Gao Jinyu looked at everyone and said, "It's settled. We'll take him to find the Thunder Beast first, and then let him send us out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain." Chapter 71. At that time, Yukai, and the others were able to find the two Thunder Beasts by chance. In addition, they didn't deliberately remember the route at that time. So at this time, they only remembered the general direction. It might be a little troublesome to find them. Qinchuan wasn't surprised by this, nor was he in a hurry. He just needed to find them slowly. In any case, he wouldn't leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain during this period of time. If they could find them, then everyone would be happy. If they couldn't find them, then it didn't matter. For the sake of the Thunder Spirit Stone, he would point out the direction for Yukai, and the others to leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain. As for whether these people could rely on their own ability to get out of here, it had nothing to do with him. He wasn't a good person, so he wasn't in the mood to work for others for free. Gao Jinyu walked in the middle of the team and kept looking back at Qinchuan, who was walking at the back of the team. Qinchuan walked slowly with a grass in his mouth. No matter if they were walking normally or speeding up, he could always easily keep up with them. He didn't look nervous at all. He was so calm that it made people feel like he was here for a walk. This was the Cloud Dragon Mountain range that was full of dangers. I heard that there are real demon beasts in this Cloud Dragon Mountain range. It was just that the simple journey was inevitably a bit dull and boring. Since there was no danger for the time being, the teenagers became lively again. Guoxing walked beside Li Mani and said to her with a mysterious face, "Demonic beasts are more powerful than ferocious beasts. It is said that every demonic beast has intelligence that is not inferior to humans. They are very cunning." Li Mani was very nervous. She was afraid that they would encounter some danger on the way forward. At this time, when she heard Guoxing mention demon beasts that were more ferocious than ominous beasts, she couldn't help but feel a little scared. She subconsciously got close to Guoxing, and her hands unconsciously held Guoxing's arm. She said with a trembling voice, "Is what you said true?" Seeing Li Mani nervously leaning on him, Guoxing's face couldn't help but show a touch of enjoyment. He coughed lightly and said to Li Mani, "Of course it's true. If it weren't for the fact that the Cloud Dragon Mountain range is in the heart of our Star Dragon Federation, maybe that demon beast would have already gone to the monster race. But don't worry. We're only moving around the periphery of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. Under normal circumstances, it's impossible for us to encounter any demonic beasts. Even if we do, I'll definitely protect you well." While speaking, Guoxing's arm had quietly climbed up Li Mani's slender and soft waist, but Li Mani seemed to be unaware of this, allowing Guoxing to take advantage of her. When everyone saw this scene, they were somewhat speechless. Wang Ying even sneered. When they were in school, Li Mani always acted like she was superior to others and did not put anyone in her eyes. Now, in this Cloud Dragon Mountain range, her performance was so unbearable. She was actually intimidated by Guoxing with just a few words and allowed Guoxing to do whatever he wanted. What was the difference between this and those women who sold their bodies for good cultivation conditions? Mani isn't usually like this. Yukai looked sadly at Li Mani, who was in Guoxing's arms. She whispered she used to look down on Guoxing at school. "I didn't expect." Qinchuan turned his head and glanced at Yukai, who had deliberately walked to his side. He gently raised his eyebrows and asked, "Are you talking to me?" "Yes." Yukier gently nodded and said, "Actually, I'm a little curious about you." Yukier looked at Qinchuan with a strange look and said, "We're all in the body refining stage. The five of us have to be careful in this Cloud Dragon mountain range. If we're not careful, we'll lose our lives. But you're living a very comfortable life alone. You're really amazing." Yukai was not deliberately flattering Qinchuan. She really thought that Qinchuan was very powerful. After all, not everyone had the courage to wander alone in the Cloud Dragon mountain range. At least, she didn't dare to. "You're overpraising me. When I first came to the Cloud Dragon mountain range, I was quite miserable, but I had no one to rely on, so I had to force myself to become stronger and adapt to the environment here." Qinchuan sneered and said to Yukai, "The five of you seem to be united and strong, but in fact, all of you are thinking that you can rely on others and that you don't need to work hard to survive. Then, the five of you don't want to work hard, so naturally, you ended up like this. I bet that if the five of you were to enter the Cloud Dragon mountain range separately, each of you would have a very good life." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Yukai couldn't help but be stunned. If it weren't for Qinchuan's words, she wouldn't have realized that she had been relying on others all the way. She had been relying on others all the way, and now she was relying on Qinchuan. From the beginning to the end, she had never thought of relying on her own strength to survive in the Cloud Dragon mountain range. Involuntarily, she once again looked at Limani, who was nestled in Guoxing's arms. In school, Limani was the goddess pursued by everyone, but in the Cloud Dragon mountain range, Limani had to put down her self-esteem and pride in order to survive and rely on Guoxing. If there was no Guoxing, maybe Limani would still rely on Wang Ying or Gao Jinyu. But Limani had never thought that when they were in school, her test results had always been higher than Guoxing's. In other words, her strength was stronger than Guoxing's. "Actually, I'm not much better than her." For a time, Yukai's mood suddenly became very low. She felt ashamed of her previous performance. Obviously, she had great power, but in the face of a crisis, she was as timid as a child. It was really wrong. Looking at the change of expression on Yukai's face, Qinchuan couldn't help but slightly raise the corner of his mouth, revealing a smile. He didn't mean to attack Yukai, but he simply didn't want to see such a good seedling like Yukai living under the protection of others. In this way, even if Yukai could cultivate to the Yuanying stage in the future, she would only be a low-level person with no strength. He had already said so much, and it could be said that he had done his best. As for how Yukai would grow up in the future, it was not a matter of concern to him. It seems to be in front. Suddenly, Wang Ying, who was walking at the front, stopped. He stretched out his hand and pointed to a rocky mound in front of them, and said to everyone, "I remember that the cave where the Thunder Beast lives is in the rocky mound in front of us." Hearing Wang Ying's words, Qinchuan immediately took 2 steps forward and walked to the front of the team. He closed his eyes slightly and fully released his perception. Sure enough, he felt a violent thunder force from the rocky mound in front of them. "It should be here." Qinchuan opened his eyes and smiled slightly, and said, "I perceive the existence of the Thunder Beast." Hearing Qinchuan's words, everyone was stunned. They had also released their perception before, but except for the rocks, they didn't perceive anything. Qinchuan could perceive the Thunder Beast in the cave. His perception was too strong. Chapter 72. Although everyone was very surprised by Qinchuan's powerful perception, at this time, everyone's mind was obviously not in this regard. They had already helped Qinchuan find the location of the Thunder Beast according to the agreement. Next, it was Qinchuan's turn to fulfill his promise and escort them out of the Cloud Dragon mountain range. "Qinchuan, now that the Thunder Beast has been found, do you think we should leave here?" Guoxing's eyes were faintly filled with fear as he looked towards the direction of the rocky mound. Those 2 lightning beasts possessed the strength of a ferocious beast. If they were to encounter them, they would definitely not be a match for them. Therefore, it was best for them to leave before they were discovered. "Don't worry. After Qin Xuan carefully sensed, he suddenly turned back and said to everyone, I sense that there's only one thunder beast in the cave. The other one doesn't seem to be here. This is an opportunity. Hearing Qin Xuan's words, everyone looked at Qin Xuan with vigilance and asked, What do you want to do? Seeing the nervous look on everyone's face, Qin Xuan chuckled and said to everyone, Don't be afraid. I won't let you do anything dangerous. Right now, there's only one thunder beast in the cave, so it's the best time to get the Thunder Spirit Stone. I'll lure the thunder beast away, and you guys just need to go in and help me get the Thunder Spirit Stone. There won't be any risk at all. How about it? No. Guoxing decisively shook his head and refused. It is still dangerous to do this. What if the other thunder beast suddenly comes back? Everyone nodded. No one knew when the other thunder beast would come back. If they acted rashly, they might encounter some accidents. Even if the thunder beast comes back, it will definitely join forces with its companions to attack me. You won't be in any danger at all. As he spoke up to hear, Qin Xuan's expression suddenly turned cold, and he said in a low voice, You're unwilling to help me obtain the Thunder Spirit Stone without any risk. Then when I escort you out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range later, can I also just lead the way? If we encounter danger along the way, I don't have to pay attention to it and let you deal with it yourselves? Seeing Qin Xuan's face changed and his tone became a little unfriendly, the expressions on everyone's faces changed slightly. At this time, everyone knew very well that if they couldn't help Qin Xuan take the Thunder Spirit Stone here, then Qin Xuan would probably not protect them later. It would take at least 2 or 3 days to leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. God knew if they would encounter any fatal danger during this period. If Qin Xuan was unwilling to help, what should they do? Everyone, don't be afraid of him. Li Mani looked at Qin Xuan with disgust and said, We said before that we would just lead the way, but now he has made an unreasonable request. If the 5 of us join forces, we can definitely defeat him. When the time comes, we can just tie him up and let him lead the way. Qin Xuan sneered, Are you going to kill me if I don't want to lead the way? Before his voice died away, a sharp alloy dagger suddenly appeared in Qin Xuan's hand, and his killing intent wantonly filled the air. Everyone, don't quarrel. Let's compromise. Suddenly, Yukai stood out. She looked at Qin Xuan nervously and said, It is enough for one person to take the Thunder Spirit Stone. You let everyone stay in a safe place. After you lead the Thunder Beast away, I will take the Thunder Spirit Stone. Even if there is danger, only I will die. At that time, you will get rid of the Thunder Beast pursuit, and then take everyone out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. How about it? Hearing Yukai O's words, everyone quieted down in an instant. No one had thought that Yukai, who was very timid before, would say such a surprising thing at this time. Everyone looked at each other and remained silent. No one stood up to oppose this suggestion. Qin Xuan looked at everyone's performance. He was very disdainful of these people's selfish behavior. He sneered, pointed to everyone, and said to Yukai, Are you sure you want to take the risk for a group of people who don't think about you at all? What do you mean? We didn't force her to do it. She is willing to do it. Li Mani shouted loudly. If Kyra really encounters danger, it will be because of you. It has nothing to do with us. You are very noisy. Looking at the selfish face of Li Mani, Qin Xuan couldn't help but frown. How could there be such a noisy woman in the world? Don't say any more. I am willing to do it. Yukai saw that everyone was about to quarrel again. She quickly came out to dissuade them. She said to Qin Xuan, There is no time to lose. Let's act quickly. Qin Xuan looked deeply at Yukai, and said, Remember, my name is Qin Xuan. I owe you a favor for today's matter. Qin Xuan also knew that his proposal to let everyone help him get the Thunder Spirit Stone was a bit excessive. But now is the best time to get the Thunder Spirit Stone. Once he missed this opportunity, he would come back here alone. Whether it was 2 or 1 Thunder Beast, the situation would become quite troublesome. So he had no choice but to do this. Qin Xuan and Yukai carefully walked among the rocks. When they were about 30 meters away from the cave, Yukai carefully pulled Qin Xuan's sleeve and said to Qin Xuan, The last time we came here, we alarmed the Thunder Beasts in the cave and were scared away. The Thunder Spirit Stone was found here. Qin Chuan looked at the cave and then said to Yu Kai, I will lead the Thunder Beasts out of the cave. When the two of us are far away, you immediately enter the cave to get the Thunder Spirit Stone. If there is any danger, protect yourself first. Yu Kai looked at Qin Chuan and said, Thank you. I should be the one thanking you. There's no time to lose. I'm going in. Qin Chuan was never a person who procrastinated. He quickly walked forward. Sure enough, a violent roar came from the cave. Obviously, the Thunder Beast was warning Qin Chuan to stay away. However, Qin Chuan did not care about this warning at all. He stepped forward and quickly arrived at the entrance of the cave. Then, he looked into the pitch-black cave. At this time, two blue lights suddenly shone from the cave and fell straight on Qin Chuan's body. Roar! A roar came from the cave, and then a huge body of more than 3 meters high and 7 or 8 meters long came out of the cave. At this time, Qin Chuan found that the two lights were clearly the eyes of the Thunder Beast. Seeing that the Thunder Beast was about to come out of the cave, Qin Chuan didn't hesitate. He raised his hand and threw the stone that he had already held in his hand at the Thunder Beast's head. The stone hit the thick scales on the Thunder Beast's head and made a crisp sound. Although it didn't hurt, it completely angered the grumpy Thunder Beast. Roar! The Thunder Beast moved its thick limbs and rushed towards the ant who dared to provoke it. Qin Chuan turned around and ran. If he was hit by the Thunder Beast, it would be no joke. Chapter 73. Although the Thunder Beast's attack power was very strong, its movement speed was relatively slow because of its size. Qin Chuan only needed to carefully maintain the distance between him and the Thunder Beast, and from time to time use some means to provoke the Thunder Beast, so that he could keep the Thunder Beast behind him and circle around it. According to the agreement between Qin Chuan and Yu Kai, Qin Chuan only needed to pin down the Thunder Beast for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, regardless of whether he got the Thunderstones or not, Yu Kai would go to the edge of the rocky mound to wait for Qin Chuan and meet up with Qin Chuan. At this time, Qin Chuan was circling the Thunder Beast while sighing in his heart. Without Yu Kai's help, it would not be easy for him to get the Thunderstones. Soon, 10 minutes passed. Qin Chuan no longer circled the Thunder Beast, but directly sped up towards the mountain forest, and then turned halfway towards the agreed place. 5 minutes later, Qin Chuan's figure appeared at the edge of the rocky mound, and saw Yu Kai anxiously waiting there. When Qin Chuan found Yu Kai also saw Qin Chuan. She looked at Qin Chuan with surprise and said, It's great that you're okay. Did you get the Thunderstones? Qin Chuan was now only concerned about the Thunderstones. As for Yu Kai's safety, she had already appeared here safely, and naturally did not encounter any danger. Yes, a total of 8 pieces. While speaking, Yu Kai took out 8 pieces of Thunderstones wrapped in a handkerchief from her bag and handed them to Qin Chuan. Then she said to Qin Chuan, You can check my bag. I didn't hide anything. No need to check. I believe in you. With the Thunderstones in hand, Qin Chuan's mood could be said to be quite good. It meant that he could soon enter the qi refining stage. He smiled at Yu Kai and said, This time, I really have to thank you. It doesn't matter. In fact, I didn't take any risks. My talent rune is of the wind attribute, so I can run very fast. Yu Kai smiled innocently, and her eyes curved into the shape of a crescent moon. She looked very cute. Let's go back and meet up with them. According to the agreement, I will escort you out of the mountain. After getting what he wanted, Qin Chuan would naturally keep his promise and send Yu Kai and the others out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. He would not make any other requests, but before that, he still had some sincere words to say to Yu Kai. Yu Kai, after the previous incident, there has been a crack in your relationship with the 4 of them. You will not get along well with them in the future. If you believe me, then listen to me and don't hang out with them in the future. These people are not worthy of you treating them as friends. Originally, Qin Chuan shouldn't meddle in other people's affairs, but Yu Kai had just done him a big favor. In addition, he could see that Yu Kai was a kind and gentle girl. Therefore, from the bottom of his heart, he didn't want Yukai to continue to be friends with those selfish people. He had already said what he should and shouldn't say. As for whether Yukai would listen or not, it was her own business. Hearing this, Yukai looked at Qin Chuan with a slightly subtle look and asked, "What about you? Can we be considered friends?" Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment, and then he smiled and said, "In fact, strictly speaking, I am also a selfish person, but how?" All of a sudden, an earth-shattering roar rang out from the distant mountain forest. A powerful pressure quickly spread out, causing everyone to feel suffocated. Qin Chuan looked in the direction of the roar and said in shock, "This aura is definitely not from a ferocious beast. It should be an evil beast." Qin Chuan had never seen an evil beast, but he could feel that this aura was definitely more terrible than any ferocious beast he had ever seen. Except for an evil beast, Qin Chuan could not think of any other possibility. That direction, they are over there. Yukai eyes widened, and she looked in the direction of the evil beast's powerful aura in horror. Gao Jinyu and the other three were over there. Could it be that they provoked this demonic beast? Thinking of this possibility, Qin Chuan could not help but frown. He no longer hesitated and said to Yukai, "Wait for me here. I will go and check the situation." "I will go with you." Yukai did not want to stay here alone, so she decided to go with Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan also knew that it was urgent, so he did not say anything more to Yukai and directly ran in the direction of the evil beast. Yukai activated her talent rune, and like a breeze, she followed closely behind Qin Chuan. The two of them ran less than 100 meters before they met Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying, who were fleeing in panic. When they saw Qin Chuan and Yukai they immediately screamed, "It's an evil beast! It's an evil beast!" Hearing Gao Jinyu scream, Qin Chuan's face suddenly became gloomy. It was really an evil beast. Where are Guoxing and Manny? Seeing only Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying, Yukai anxiously asked about Guoxing and Li Manny's whereabouts. At this moment, an extremely shrill scream came from the front. "Guoxing! No! Help me!" Hearing this scream, everyone immediately looked up and saw Guoxing looking back with a frightened face. Suddenly, he pushed away Li Manny, who was holding his arm, and his fat body got rid of Li Manny's burden. He immediately burst out with an amazing speed, and in the blink of an eye, the distance between him and Li Manny was widened. Bang! A huge gorilla covered in golden fur suddenly descended from the sky and landed in front of Li Manny with a bang, blocking her way. Li Manny's face was pale, and her eyes were fixed on the golden-haired gorilla standing in front of her. Her delicate features were twisted together because of extreme fear. It was extremely ferocious. "No! No! No!" Li Manny cried bitterly and shook her head crazily, hoping that the golden-haired gorilla would let her go. However, in the face of Li Manny's pleading, the golden-haired gorilla's face showed a very human-like mocking smile. It stretched out its huge palm, grabbed Li Manny's arm, and tore it off from her body. Blood splattered in the air. When everyone saw this incomparably cruel scene, the expressions on their faces became incomparably horrified. The more cowardly ones like Guoxing were so scared that they even peed their pants. "Go!" Without any hesitation, Qin Chuan turned around and grabbed Yukai's arm to run away. In the face of this evil beast, which was at least at the late stage of the qi refining stage, they had no chance of winning. They could only run away as fast as possible. As for the remaining 3 people, he couldn't care less. Whether they lived or died depended on themselves. Chapter 74. The golden-haired gorilla was dealing with Li Manny, so it didn't have time to deal with Qin Chuan and the others. Therefore, Qin Chuan and the others quickly distanced themselves from the golden-haired gorilla and were temporarily safe. Looking at Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying, who were following closely behind, Qin Chuan frowned and asked, "What the hell is going on?" Yukai also looked at them with red eyes, wanting a reasonable explanation. Hearing this, Gao Jinyu explained with a gloomy face It's Guixing and Li Manny. It's all their fault. If they hadn't acted on their own, we wouldn't have provoked this evil beast." It turned out that they were resting in a safe, open space, waiting for Qin Xuan and Yu Kai to return. Unexpectedly, Li Manny saw a little monkey running with fruit in the forest. She thought it was very cute, so she begged Guixing to catch it as a pet. Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying dissuaded them, but they thought that it was just a little monkey, so it shouldn't be dangerous. So they chased the monkey and ran away. The little monkey was chased all the way to the golden-haired gorilla's nest. When they saw the terrifying golden-haired gorilla, Guixing and Li Manny realized that something was wrong, but it was too late to say anything at that time. Needless to say, Qin Xuan could guess what happened next. It must be Guixing and Li Manny who fled in a hurry, leading the golden-haired gorilla here and successfully causing harm to everyone. "I don't want to do this," Guixing cried in horror. "It was Li Manny who kept begging me. I was forced to do this. It's all her fault. It's all her fault." Looking at Guixing's ugly face, Qin Xuan really wanted to tear up Guixing's fat face directly. He had already told these people not to act recklessly, but they didn't listen. Now that they had caused big trouble, what was the use of shirking responsibility? How? Suddenly, a terrible roar came from behind them again. Feeling the terrible pressure that was quickly approaching, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. The golden-haired gorilla had caught up with them. It wanted to kill them all. "We can't escape." Guixing's face was deathly pale as he turned around and looked at the golden-haired gorilla that was faintly visible in the forest. The fear in his heart was magnified infinitely, almost swallowing him whole. Their running speed in the forest was much slower than the golden-haired gorilla. With the golden-haired gorilla's speed, it wouldn't take long for it to catch up with them. "Hurry up and think of something." Guixing suddenly turned his head and looked at Qin Xuan, who was running in front of him. "You can't abandon us." In the face of Guixing's wailing, Qin Xuan did not even have the mood to respond. If he had the strength to scream, he might as well use it on running. "Qin Xuan, we can't outrun it." Yu Kai looked at Qin Xuan worriedly and asked, "Will we die?" "We won't die." Qin Xuan gritted his teeth and said, "Let's change direction and go to the rocky mound." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Yu Kai was slightly taken aback, and then her eyes suddenly lit up. Qin Xuan suddenly changed direction, and Gao Jinyu and the other two immediately followed. When they gradually approached the rocky mound, Gao Jinyu and the other two finally understood what Qin Xuan meant. "You want to divert the trouble? That's too dangerous." Wang Ying frowned and looked at Qin Xuan. If they were not careful, they would be attacked by the two thunder beasts and the evil beasts behind them. It was too dangerous. Qin Xuan sneered and asked, "Then do you have a better way?" Wang Ying was speechless. Indeed, they had no better way. They could only pin their hopes on Qin Xuan and hope that Qin Xuan's judgment was correct. Soon, they rushed into the rocky mound, and the golden-haired gorilla followed closely behind, roaring and rushing over. When it saw Qin Xuan and the rest running into the rubble to hide, its golden eyes could not help but reveal a cold look of disdain. "Trying to use such a method to avoid its pursuit? Aren't you underestimating it a little too much?" Just as the golden-haired gorilla was about to step into the rocky mound, an angry roar came from behind it. A huge thunder beast slowly walked out of the forest. It stared at the golden-haired gorilla's back with fear in its eyes. It swung its tail restlessly, as if it was hesitating about something. The thunder beast that went out before actually came back at this time. The golden-haired gorilla looked back at the thunder beast behind it, and a touch of anger appeared on its face. It roared at the thunder beast, which probably meant, "Go away." The thunder beast, which was originally a little afraid, was furious when it saw the golden-haired gorilla being so arrogant in front of its home. It raised its head and roared. Then, a roar echoed from the rocky mound. Soon, the other thunder beast that was guarding the cave slowly arrived at the scene. It and its companion attacked the golden-haired gorilla in a pincer attack. As the king of the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range, the golden-haired gorilla was furious when it saw that the two thunder beasts had the courage to provoke it. It roared loudly. It didn't expect that other than those ants, there would be other reptiles that had the courage to challenge its majesty. They deserved to die. Boom! The golden-haired gorilla stomped on the ground angrily, and its body suddenly rose into the air. It pounced on the thunder beast standing in front of it, raised its huge golden iron fist, and smashed it hard on the thunder beast's head. Roar! The thunder beast, which was hit, wailed. The horn on its forehead suddenly lit up with a brilliant lightning, and with a boom, it bombarded the golden-haired gorilla's chest. The violent power of the lightning charred the golden-haired gorilla's chest, and the golden-haired gorilla couldn't help but howl. In the rocky mound, everyone was hiding behind the rocks, looking at the scene in front of them with astonishment. They originally only hoped that the thunder beast's existence could restrain the golden-haired gorilla, but they didn't expect the two sides to fight so quickly. We're saved. We're saved. When Guoxing saw the golden-haired gorilla and the thunder beast fighting, his body went soft, and he sat on the ground. His eyes couldn't help but turn red, and it looked like he was about to cry out loud. Trash! If your cries attract the attention of these ferocious beasts and demonic beasts, I'll kill you before I die. When Qin Xuan saw Guoxing's useless performance, he immediately shouted angrily and looked at Guoxing with murderous eyes. Hearing Qin Xuan's warning, Guoxing swallowed the sobs that were about to come out of his mouth. He raised his hand to cover his mouth and looked at Qin Xuan with fear in his eyes, as if he was really afraid that Qin Xuan would kill him in a rage to vent his anger. Seeing Guoxing shut up, Qin Xuan breathed a sigh of relief and then said to everyone, "Now let's go." However, just as everyone was about to quietly leave, an accident happened. Chapter 75. Originally, everyone thought that the battle between the golden-haired gorilla and the two thunder beasts would last for a while. However, they had underestimated the suppression effect of the bloodline of the demonic beasts. The golden-haired gorilla roared, and its body suddenly swelled up from its original height of more than 2 meters to a height of 10 meters. It was like a giant. The golden-haired gorilla pounded its chest with its fists and let out a deafening roar. It swept its tail fiercely and smashed the head of the thunder beast under it like an iron rod. The thick scales on the thunder beast's head were smashed into pieces, and blood flowed out. Then, in the midst of the thunder beast's wailing, the golden-haired gorilla smashed its fist into the thunder beast's head through the wound, killing it on the spot. Seeing this scene, the other thunder beast's ferocity was completely aroused. It roared and rushed toward the golden-haired gorilla. However, no matter how angry it was no match for the powerful golden-haired gorilla. Before it could reach the golden-haired gorilla had already jumped up and punched the thunder beast to the ground. Its iron rod-like tail whizzed through the air and smashed the thunder beast's chin. The thunder beast's chin was smashed into pieces on the spot, and hot blood splashed everywhere. Bang! The iron fist stained with blood smashed into the thunder beast's wound, and the thunder beast's brain was turned into a mass of paste. It couldn't be more dead. After killing the two thunder beasts in succession, the golden-haired gorilla raised its head and roared again. Its ferocious aura shook the sky. In the rocky mound, everyone was stunned by the golden-haired gorilla's power. No one expected the golden-haired gorilla to be so powerful that it could kill the two thunder beasts in the blink of an eye. Qin Xuan looked at the roaring golden-haired gorilla and couldn't help but feel his scalp tingle. How could such a monster be defeated by human strength? What should we do now? Yukai tugged at Qin Xuan's sleeve and weakly asked Qin Xuan's opinion. Now she was at her wit's end and really didn't know how to deal with the situation in front of her. Qin Xuan frowned and said to Yukai, "Let's go first." Staying here was no different than waiting for death. He had to leave. Qin Xuan took Yukai's hand and turned around to leave. He had no intention of greeting the other three. It would be more convenient for him to move around with Yukai. If he took the other three with him, they would be a burden. However, Qin Xuan didn't intend to care about the other three, but the three didn't think so. Now, they were out of their wits, and their minds were muddled. Therefore, The only way they could think of to escape was to follow Qin Chuan. Wherever Qin Chuan went, they would follow. When Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying saw that Qin Chuan was about to leave, they immediately followed him. Even though Guoxing, who was sitting on the ground, had no strength in his body, he gritted his teeth and got up from the ground in the face of the threat of death and followed. After leaving the rocky mound, Qin Chuan had been paying attention to the movements behind him. When he noticed that the golden-haired gorilla didn't seem to be chasing after him, he was relieved. It seemed that the golden-haired gorilla's power was not without any sequelae. Otherwise, wouldn't have let them go. What should we do now? Yukai followed Qin Chuan, panting. This series of running had almost exhausted her physical strength. If she kept running like this, she would die of exhaustion before the demon beast caught up with them. Gao Jinyu and the other two weren't in a good situation either. They were even running a bit longer than Qin Chuan and Yukai. At this time, in order to not fall behind, they were still clenching their teeth and persevering. They were afraid that if they fell, they would never have the chance to stand up again. Qin Chuan saw that Yukai was almost unable to hold on. He couldn't help but frown slightly and said to Yukai, "I'll carry you." While speaking, Qin Chuan didn't give Yukai a chance to refuse. He directly bent down and carried Yukai on his back. Yukai was caught off guard. She immediately let out a low cry, and her cheeks quickly turned red. It was the first time in her life that she had such intimate contact with the opposite sex. "I don't talk nonsense." Qin Chuan didn't give Yukai a chance to speak. He directly interrupted Yukai and said in a deep voice, "That demon beast won't let us go. So we must find a secret place to rest first, and then find a chance to leave. If he were to leave now, it would be too much of a stretch. After all, running all the way here had consumed too much of his physical strength. Even Qin Chuan, who was in the best condition, could only barely persevere and run for a while. One had to know that if he wanted to leave the Cloud Dragon mountain range from here, no matter how fast he was, it would take at least 2 days. Fortunately, Qin Chuan had lived in the Cloud Dragon mountain range for several months, so he still knew some relatively secret hiding places. As long as they ran for another half an hour, they would be able to reach the nearest hiding place. Half an hour didn't sound long, but for everyone who was in danger at all times, it was really too torturous. Finally, after running to a thick tree, Qin Chuan stopped moving forward. He put Yukai down and said to her, "Follow me." After saying this, Qin Chuan directly climbed up the tree. Seeing this, Yukai hurriedly followed. When the two climbed to a height of about 12 or 13 meters, Qin Chuan stopped, leaned forward, and got into a secret tree hole. Seeing this scene, Yukai also got in. When she saw the situation in the tree hole, she couldn't help but show a touch of surprise on her face. This tree hole didn't look big, but it wasn't formed naturally. There were many traces of artificial carvings. The ground was dry and the environment was very clean. Obviously, someone had carefully cleaned this place. And this person must be Qin Chuan without asking. This is the place where I usually recuperate when I'm injured. It's safe. That demon beast shouldn't be able to find here for the time being. Qin Chuan said as he lay down on the dry haystack. After running all the way, he was really tired and wanted to have a good rest. At this time, a panic shout suddenly came from outside the tree hole. "Kaier, where are you?" Hearing Guoxing's panicked cry, Qin Chuan, who had just laid down, couldn't help but furrow his brows. This tree hole could be considered spacious if it only accommodated him and Yukai. But if there were 3 people outside, then it would be a bit crowded. However, if the 3 people outside were allowed to move freely around the tree, then sooner or later, they would attract the demon beast. Yukai also saw Qin Chuan's impatience. As the person who was protected by Qin Chuan, she knew that she wasn't qualified to say anything about Qin Chuan's style of doing things. But she felt a little sorry to see Gao Jinyu and the other 2 outside being frightened. At this time, Qin Chuan got up helplessly, pushed away the leaves blocking the entrance, and said to the 3 people outside who were lying on the branches nervously, "Don't shout. Come in quickly." Chapter 76. In the tree hole, because Gao Jinyu, Wang Ying, and Guoxing joined, it immediately became crowded. They could barely sit together, but it was basically impossible for them to move their bodies, which made them feel slightly aggrieved. Qin Chuan sat on his haystack, looking at Yukai, who was a little uncomfortable but still silent. He sighed helplessly, tidied up his haystack, and then said to Yukai, "Come and sit here. It won't be too crowded." If it were Li Manny, Qin Chuan wouldn't care at all. Yukai blushed and looked at Qin Chuan shyly, then moved her body and sat down, which was much more comfortable than before. Qin Chuan didn't care about Yukai's blushing shyness. At this moment of life and death, he really wasn't in the mood to think about other things. Looking at Gao Jinyu's group of 3 who were sitting on the other side of the tree hole, Qin Chuan's face was cold as he said in a deep voice, "It's true that I promised to escort all of you out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range, but aren't all of you thinking too highly of me?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying could only suffer in silence. They were also victims and felt wronged in their hearts. If they wanted to blame someone, they should blame Guoxing and Li Manny. If it weren't for these 2 people, they wouldn't have fallen to this point. In the face of Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying's hateful gazes, Guoxing looked aggrieved and whispered, "I really tried to persuade Li Manny, but she didn't listen. As a man, I can't let her act alone. Anyway, Li Manny is already dead. No matter how you slander her, she can't jump out to accuse you." Qin Chuan sneered, "But don't forget that there are still ghost cultivators in this world. If the elders of the Li family come to summon Li Manny's soul back, when the time comes to testify, your lies will become shackles on your body. We all saw with our own eyes that you pushed Li Manny away. Otherwise, she wouldn't have died. I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." Guoxing also understood at this time that it was useless no matter how he explained. This matter was indeed caused by him and Li Manny. When he escaped, he did push Li Manny away. If these things were known by the elders of Li Manny's family, they would not spare him. "You shut up first. Do you want to use crying to attract the golden-haired ape?" Qin Chuan looked at Guoxing very impatiently. He really had never seen such a coward, who cried all day long like a woman. The golden-haired ape was still very scary for Guoxing. As soon as he heard Qin Chuan say that crying would attract the golden-haired ape, Guoxing immediately shut up and no longer make any sound. Seeing that Guoxing had finally calmed down, Qin Chuan looked at Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying. Facing Qin Chuan's gaze, Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying subconsciously trembled, as if they were worried that something bad would happen. In short, this matter was caused by Li Manny and Guoxing. The 4 of us are all victims. If we can safely leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain range, you should know what to say when the elders of Li Manny's family hold you accountable, right? Although Li Manny was said to have died in the hands of a demon beast, it should have nothing to do with them. However, no one knew if the elders of Li Manny's family would implicate them because of this. The others were protected by their family elders, so they generally wouldn't suffer any losses. However, he was different. He had no one to rely on. Maybe he would become the target of the elders of Li family to vent their anger. So he had to plan ahead and greet these people in advance. None of them were fools. Everyone could understand the meaning of Qin Chuan's words. Gao Jinyu immediately said, "You can rest assured that when the time comes, I will definitely tell the elders of Li family about the development of the matter fairly and objectively. If the Li family wants to make things difficult for you, I'll be the first to disagree." "Me too," Wang Ying said to Qin Chuan with a sincere face. "My attitude is the same as Jinyu's. You are our savior. We will not do that kind of ungrateful thing." Although Yukai didn't say anything, Qin Chuan felt that Yukai would definitely stand on his side. So now the only one left was Guoxing facing Qin Chuan's gaze. Guoxing looked sad and said to Qin Chuan, "You can rest assured I know what to do." Although Qin Chuan didn't particularly trust everyone's guarantee, it was better than nothing. He took a little breath and said to everyone, "Today we will rest here and wait until tomorrow to see the situation. If there is no danger, a woo." While Qin Chuan was talking, a shocking roar suddenly sounded in the forest. Hearing this familiar roar, everyone's face changed. Guixing was so scared that he almost wet his pants. Qin Chuan narrowed his eyes slightly, carefully identified the direction of the sound, and then said to everyone, "The golden-haired gorilla should be some distance away from us. We're still safe for the time being. Well, let's rest." Qin Chuan didn't arrange for anyone to keep watch at night. This place was very hidden, and the vision was not good, so there was no need for that. Hearing Qin Chuan say that they could rest, everyone's nerves, which had been tense for most of the day, relaxed. After a while, they all fell asleep, and Qin Chuan was no exception. Qin Chuan didn't know how much time had passed. When he woke up, it was dark outside. He wanted to move his body, but he woke up Yukai, who was hugging his arm and sleeping soundly. "You woke up?" Yukai was very embarrassed. She didn't know why she was holding Qin Chuan's arm in a daze. She didn't know if she was drooling or not. Fortunately, it was dark at this time, and nothing could be seen clearly. Otherwise, Qin Chuan would definitely see that Yukai's whole face was red. "This is for you." Qin Chuan took out a high-grade nutrition liquid from his backpack and handed it to Yukai, saying, "Eat something." At this time, Yukai's eyes had adapted to the darkness. She looked at the high-grade nutrition liquid handed by Qin Chuan and asked, very touched, "Why are you so good to me? Don't get me wrong. I don't like you, and I don't want you to marry me." Qin Chuan grinned and said, "I said that you helped me get the Thunder Spirit Stone, so I owe you a favor. Since I owe you, I should take good care of you within the scope of my ability. In addition, don't sleep for the time being after eating. I want to cultivate. Help me keep an eye on things." After thinking about it, Qin Chuan decided to immediately use the power of the Thunder Spirit Stone to advance to the Qi refining stage. In this way, he would have a greater chance to leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range alive. Chapter 77. In Qin Chuan's original plan, he planned to leave the Cloud Dragon Mountains, return to the state capital of Qing, and rent a quiet and safe practice room. Then, he would use the power of the Thunder Spirit Stone to advance to the Qi refining stage. However, he needed more power now, so he had to try to advance to the Qi refining stage in such a harsh environment. Although he would not be a match for the golden-haired gorilla, even if he advanced to the Qi refining stage, he should at least be able to fight it. He would not be like a delicate porcelain that would break at the slightest touch. I promised Senior that I would wait until my brain development reached the perfect state before breaking through. Now, under such circumstances, I can only break through in a hurry. Originally, Qin Chuan wanted to wait until he returned to the state capital of Qing to test his brain development, but now it seemed that there was no chance for that. Qin Chuan sighed helplessly, then took out 2 pieces of Thunder Spirit Stone from his backpack and held them in both hands. He closed his eyes and began to operate the thunder-devouring scripture to absorb the power of thunder and spiritual energy in the Thunder Spirit Stone. In the dark, Yukai stared at Qin Chuan's side profile intently. Looking at Qin Chuan's focused appearance, a touch of admiration and worship involuntarily emerged in her bright eyes. In the past, Yukai had come into contact with a lot of geniuses. Each and every one of them was pretentious and extraordinary. It was unknown how many girls would fall in love with them. For example, Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying were among the best. She originally thought that most of the geniuses in the world were like this, but after meeting Qin Chuan, she realized that she was wrong. From killing the Green Wolf, to obtaining the Thunder Spirit Stone, and then to leading them to escape from the golden-haired gorilla's clutches and take refuge here. Qin Chuan's performance could be said to be perfect and impeccable. Whether in terms of strength or courage, Qin Chuan was far better than any of the geniuses she had ever seen. Such a person is the real genius. Yukai murmured softly. She could not help but look at Gao Jinyu and the other 2 who were sleeping and shook her head secretly. At this time, Qin Chuan did not know that Yukai was comparing him with Gao Jinyu and the other 2, but even if he knew, he probably would not take it to heart. For the current Qin Chuan, nothing was more important than improving his strength. As Qin Chuan expected, the Thunder Spirit Stone was indeed very beneficial to his cultivation. When absorbing the power of thunder in the Thunder Spirit Stone, Qin Xuan could clearly feel that the barrier that had been sealed was faintly showing signs of breaking through. Although the signs of breaking through were not obvious, at least, let Qin Xuan see the hope of advancing to the next level. Time passed little by little. Soon, the power of thunder and spiritual power contained in the two Thunder Spirit Stones in Qin Xuan's hands were completely absorbed by Qin Xuan. The Thunder Spirit Stones changed from their original blue color to a faint white color, and they were crushed with a gentle pinch. Without any hesitation, Qin Xuan grabbed 2 more Thunder Spirit Stones and continued to cultivate. In less than an hour, he changed to 2 more Thunder Spirit Stones, and this time, Qin Xuan finally felt that the barrier to the next level was clearly broken. Kacha, kacha! Qin Xuan seemed to hear the sound of the barrier to the next level being completely broken. It was as beautiful as the sound of nature, with the tree whole as the center. The spiritual energy within a radius of nearly 100 meters suddenly became active. Like a river flowing into the sea, it rushed toward Qin Xuan, who was sitting cross-legged in the tree hole. It poured into Qin Xuan's body through his pores, filling his limbs and bones, tempering Qin Xuan's muscles, bones, blood, and qi. The surge of spiritual energy woke up Gao Jinyu and the other 2 who were sleeping soundly. They did not know what was going on, and they stared blankly at Qin Xuan, who was covered in blue lightning. Their minds were in chaos. What was going on? Very quickly, a stench filled the air in the tree hole, and the person who created this stench was Qin Xuan. His body had been tempered by spiritual energy and the power of lightning, and a large amount of grayish-black filth was expelled from his body. It stained his skin, turning him into a mud monkey. Seeing the changes in Qin Xuan's body, Gao Jinyu could not help but widen his eyes and whisper, "He has advanced." Wang Ying and Guoxing also reacted at this time. Qin Xuan's performance was clearly a phenomenon that would only occur when he advanced from the body refining stage to the qi refining stage. For a moment, everyone looked at Qin Xuan with envy. In such a dangerous environment, Qin Xuan could advance to the qi refining stage. This was something that none of them expected. This is a good thing. Gao Jinyu pursed his lips and said, "He has advanced, and his strength has become stronger. We will also be safer." Wang Ying and Guoxing agreed with Gao Jinyu's words. In this Cloud Dragon Mountain range, they had to rely on Qin Xuan to survive. Now that Qin Xuan had successfully advanced to the qi refining stage and his strength had become stronger, it was naturally a good thing for them. As for envy and jealousy, it was human nature. After all, they were all pretentious geniuses, seeing others step into the qi refining stage one step ahead of them. It was inevitable that some special emotions would appear in their hearts. This was normal and very reasonable. Although the air in the tree hole had become very dirty, no one had the intention to go out for a breath of fresh air. No one dared to take this risk. If they were discovered by the golden-haired gorilla, they would be finished. Qin Xuan closed his eyes and adjusted his breath for about 10 minutes. Then he finished this cultivation. He slowly opened his eyes and said to everyone, "The spiritual energy riot caused by my advancement just now may attract the attention of the golden-haired gorilla. We can't stay in this tree hole. We have to leave immediately." Hearing Qin Xuan's words, the expression on everyone's face suddenly became serious. If the spiritual energy riot really attracted the golden-haired gorilla, it would not be a laughing matter. Soon, everyone started to move. They left the tree hole and quickly moved in the direction that Qin Xuan had pointed out. When they passed by a small stream, Qin Xuan didn't care if there were girls around. He directly took off his clothes and jumped in to take a bath. The feeling of being covered in dirt was too uncomfortable. Even though it was still night, Yukai could still clearly see Qin Xuan's vigorous posture. His face was red like a ripe strawberry, making people have the urge to take a bite. Guoxing also took a bath with Qin Xuan. He had peed his pants before, and his combat uniform was already dirty. He had endured for so long, and now was the time to take a bath. No one would think that he was wasting time. While washing his body, Qin Chuan was also silently feeling the changes in his body. Compared to the body refining stage, the Qi refining stage was undoubtedly more powerful. This kind of strength was not only reflected in the enhancement of the physical quality, but also reflected in the use of spiritual energy. In the past, Qin Chuan could only use spiritual energy to temper his body and blood, but now he could finally use spiritual energy in battle. Chapter 78. Is this the feeling of being in the Qi refining stage? If I were to face the Thunder Beast again, I might be able to kill them. Qin Chuan took a deep breath and temporarily suppressed the excitement in his heart. Although he had become a lot stronger, he was still far behind the golden-haired gorilla. Moreover, the Qi refining stage was just the entry level. There was really nothing to be proud of. After sorting out his emotions and adjusting his mentality, Qin Chuan wrung his clothes dry, then put them on and said to everyone, "Let's go." After a little rest, everyone set off again. Taking advantage of the darkness before dawn, they moved towards the periphery of the Cloud Dragon mountain range. Although they encountered some wild beasts along the way, they were all detected by Qin Chuan in advance and killed in an instant without any delay. After running for 3 hours, Guixing, who was the weakest, couldn't hold on any longer. His face was pale, and he was sweating profusely. He followed the team weakly and begged, "Let's rest for a while. I can't hold on any longer." Gao Jinyu and Wang Ying, who were running in front of Guixing, couldn't help but frown. They still had plenty of physical strength and could hold on for a while. If they stopped and rested now, it would be a waste of time. As for Qin Chuan and Yu Kai, they were not in their consideration at all. After all, Qin Chuan was now a cultivator in the Qi refining stage, and if Yu Kai was tired, she could be carried by Qin Chuan. Her treatment was much better than theirs. "You hold on for a while." Gao Jinyu frowned and said to Guixing, "We are now racing against time. The sooner we leave, the safer we will be. If you can't hold on, then sit down and rest." Wang Ying sneered, "Anyway, we won't stop." Hearing Wang Ying's words, Guixing didn't dare to say that he was tired anymore. He could only grit his teeth and hold on. If he was really left alone in this forest, he would have no place to cry. Qin Chuan was well aware of what happened at the back of the team, but he didn't care at all. He only cared about leading the way. As for whether Guixing and the others could keep up, it depended on their own ability. Oh, suddenly, a shocking roar resounded not far behind them. When they heard this familiar roar, their expressions instantly became unsightly. The golden-furred gorilla was actually behind them. When Guixing heard the golden-haired gorilla's roar, he was so scared that his legs went soft and he fell to the ground with a plop. But then he got up from the ground and ran after everyone. Seeing this scene, everyone was a little stunned. No one expected that the golden-haired gorilla's roar could have an adrenaline-like effect on Guixing, stimulating this damn fatty's potential. To be honest, even Guixing himself didn't know that his movements could be so agile and swift. If he wasn't forced into a corner, he wouldn't know where his limit was. That golden-haired gorilla is chasing us. It's about 1 kilometer behind us. Qin Chuan's face was calm as he told everyone this despairing news. Although he couldn't see the golden-haired gorilla's figure, he could clearly feel the existence of the golden-haired gorilla's violent aura. That aura was closing in on them at an extremely fast speed. It would definitely catch up to them in less than 10 minutes. Pada! Qin Chuan suddenly braked and stopped running. Everyone didn't know why, so they stopped one after another. Everyone looked at Qin Chuan, waiting for Qin Chuan's arrangement. "We can't keep running. We can't outrun it. We have to find a way to kill it." Qin Chuan gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "Today, either it dies or we die." When he heard Qin Chuan say that he wanted to kill the golden-haired gorilla, Guixing's face instantly showed a touch of despair. That's a monster. Even a cultivator at the late stage of Qi refining stage may not be able to defeat it. We are no match for it at all. Shut up. Qin Chuan stared at Guixing with extremely fierce eyes. If you are afraid of death and want to run, then get out of here now. After being reprimanded by Qin Chuan, Guixing had no intention of running away at all. If he followed Qin Chuan, there might be a way to survive. If he left Qin Chuan, he might die even faster. Seeing that everyone's mood was not high and they were all afraid of the golden-haired gorilla, Qin Chuan made a long story short and said very quickly, "I just felt that the golden-haired gorilla's aura is much weaker than yesterday. When it gets closer to us, you will be able to feel it carefully. This is our chance. We know that it has become weaker, but it doesn't know that I have become stronger." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, everyone's eyes couldn't help but light up. If the golden-haired gorilla was weakened, they might have a chance to defeat it. What should we do? Yukai looked at Qin Chuan nervously. I have a talent rune with wind property. Maybe it can come in handy. Qin Chuan pursed his lips and looked at Yukai seriously. I need you to help me lead the golden-haired gorilla to a specific battlefield. I will make arrangements there in advance. If you can't get there in time, you may be killed by the golden-haired gorilla. Are you confident in your speed? Yukai clenched her fists and looked at Qin Chuan firmly. She gritted her teeth and said, "Yes." Ow! The golden-haired gorilla, who was running in the forest, opened its mouth and let out an extremely arrogant roar. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, all the wild beasts and fierce beasts that heard the roar retreated in the direction of the roar, for fear of angering the king of the forest and bringing about a disaster of extinction. The golden-haired gorilla was very satisfied with the behavior of these wild beasts and fierce beasts. It liked the feeling of being feared. However, when it thought of the several ants that dared to provoke it yesterday, the golden-haired gorilla's ugly face, which was full of hair, suddenly became gloomy. It bared its teeth to express its anger. Ever since it had killed the 2 lightning beasts yesterday, it had been searching everywhere for the whereabouts of those ants. Finally, it had discovered the aura that those fellows had left behind in the mountain forest this morning and had chased them all the way here. Now it could clearly smell the sweet smell of flesh and blood on those ants. Very soon, it would be able to have a full meal. Clatter! The golden-haired gorilla put its big hand on a branch and gently swung it. Its body suddenly flew dozens of meters away. At the same time, a delicate figure was reflected in its eyes. Looking at the figure who was running away in panic, the golden-haired gorilla couldn't help showing a ferocious smile. The happy killing was about to begin. Chapter 79. In the forest, Yukai desperately stimulated the power of the talent rune to increase her speed to the extreme. She rushed towards the battlefield that Qin Chuan had planned. On the way, Yukai could clearly perceive that the golden-haired gorilla was approaching her quickly. It was as if the scythe of the Grim Reaper had been placed on her neck and could take her life at any time. The fear and panic of death turned into a strong will to survive, forcing Yukai to constantly tap into her own potential. She dodged the golden-haired gorilla's playful attacks again and again, and ran as fast as lightning in the forest. Although the process of escape was very dangerous, it also made Yukai clearly realize that Qin Chuan was not lying. The strength of this golden-haired gorilla was indeed much weaker than yesterday. If it had been the golden-haired gorilla yesterday in its heyday, perhaps she would have already died. Soon, I'm almost there. Yukai looked ahead, her small face full of nervousness. As long as she could hold on for another 7. No, as long as she could hold on for another 5 seconds, she could arrive at the agreed place and lure the golden-haired gorilla into the predetermined battlefield. Whoosh! Yukai's figure was like lightning, and she quickly rushed to a small, open space in front of her. At the same time, she looked behind her, expecting the golden-haired gorilla to chase her into the open space. However, to her surprise, the golden-haired gorilla stopped running in front of the open space. Seeing the golden-haired gorilla stop, Yukai could not help but be stunned. Qin Chuan and the others hiding in the dark also suddenly changed their expressions. They looked nervously at the golden-haired gorilla that had stopped, and their hearts were beating like drums. Thump, thump, thump. The golden-haired gorilla was not an unintelligent, ominous beast. It was very smart, and its wisdom was not inferior to that of human beings. Therefore, when faced with some special situations, it would also think. In fact, it did not notice any traps in the open space in front of it, but it perceived that Qin Xuan and the others were hiding in the open space, which made it instinctively feel a sense of danger. At the same time, it also realized one thing. It was very weak now, and those ant-like humans wanted to take advantage of its weakness to kill it. How? The golden-haired gorilla roared angrily, suddenly jumped up, and quickly rushed to the left side of the open space. Its target was Gao Jinyu, who was hiding behind the tree. Although it did not feel that the arrangement of Qin Xuan and the others could pose any threat to it, it still did not want to take the risk, so it decided to take the initiative and kill an ant first. Facing the golden-haired gorilla's attack, Gao Jinyu's heart almost jumped out of his throat. Fortunately, he remembered Qin Xuan's instructions and quickly rushed to the open space. When the golden-haired gorilla saw Gao Jinyu's, it did not continue to chase after him. Instead, it roared angrily. Gao Gao and the golden-haired gorilla. This golden-haired gorilla's strength is indeed much weaker. In the dense canopy, Wang Ying looked down and saw the scene of Gao Jinyu dodging the golden-haired gorilla's attack. As Qin Xuan said before, the golden-haired gorilla's strength was much weaker than yesterday. If it was yesterday, no matter how fast Gao Jinyu's reaction was, he would definitely not be able to dodge the golden-haired gorilla's attack. In fact, other than the golden-haired gorilla's aura being much weaker, the color of its golden hair was also much dimmer at this time. All of this showed that the golden-haired gorilla was weak, and it also gave everyone more confidence in killing this golden-haired gorilla. How? The golden-haired gorilla waved its fists angrily and pounded its chest. The feeling of being toyed with by ants made it feel unprecedentedly angry. It must tear these ants to pieces and let them know how terrible the consequences of angering it were. In the roar, the golden-haired gorilla's body rushed out again. This time its target was Guoxing. Even though Guoxing was prepared, he still could not react in time. The golden-haired gorilla slapped his shoulder fiercely. Suddenly, his entire shoulder collapsed, and his flesh was badly mutilated. "Ah!" Guoxing screamed and rushed to the open space. He tried his best to crawl to the other side of the open space. He knew that as long as he was in the open space, the golden-haired gorilla would not dare to chase after him. The golden-haired gorilla did not chase after Guoxing. It rushed out again. This time, its target was Wang Ying, who was hiding in the canopy. With the experience of Gao Jinyu and Guoxing, Wang Ying jumped down from the canopy and landed straight on the open space. Then, he ran to the other side without looking back. Once again, the golden-haired gorilla missed. The furious golden-haired gorilla saw Wang Ying using the open space to avoid its pursuit. It was so angry that it wanted to break its snow-white teeth. It really wanted to rush over and tear Wang Ying to pieces, but its current state did not allow it to be too rash. Roar! The golden-haired gorilla roared again. This time, its target was naturally the last person, Qin Xuan. Because he had to support Yu Kai, Qin Xuan's hiding position was relatively far from the open space. After seeing that the golden-haired gorilla had locked onto him, Qin Xuan immediately turned to Yu Kai beside him and said, "Go. Remember to protect me later." Yu Kai looked at Qin Xuan worriedly, then immediately turned and ran away. When the golden-haired gorilla's angry roar sounded, she subconsciously looked back. Zalala, a dazzling lightning suddenly descended, turning everything in front of Yu Kai into a blue color. Go to hell. Accompanied by Qin Xuan's roar, the golden-haired gorilla's extremely mournful scream sounded at the same time. The violent power of thunder surged wildly, drilling into the body of the golden-haired gorilla like a poisonous snake, crazily destroying the internal organs of the golden-haired gorilla. In just a few breaths, the golden-haired gorilla was charred black. Qin Xuan's situation was not optimistic. When he stimulated the power of thunder to attack the golden-haired gorilla, the golden-haired gorilla's huge palm also slapped his chest. With just one slap, his chest caved in. The huge force caused him to fly back dozens of meters on the spot and hit a big tree fiercely. That miserable appearance made Qin Chuan involuntarily think of the scene when he first entered the Cloud Dragon Mountain range and faced the angry big black bear. Sure enough, challenging a higher-level opponent is not something a human can do. This was Qin Chuan's last thought before he fainted. Chapter 80. Outside the Cloud Dragon Mountain range, Yukai was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking worriedly at Qin Chuan, who was lying on the bed. Her eyes were red and swollen. Obviously, she had been crying. Seeing Yukai-er's appearance, the elegant young woman sitting on the chair couldn't help but sigh softly and said, "I have said many times, although he is seriously injured, I have given him the Luo Hong #2 capsule. In 2 hours, his injuries will be completely healed." Hearing the words of the elegant young woman, Yukai turned to look at her and asked pitifully, "In that case, why hasn't he woken up yet? Sister Aju, are you really not lying to me?" Hearing this, Aju smiled bitterly and said to Yukai, "Do you really think it is easy to kill a demon beast? Even if that demon beast is in a weak state, it is definitely not something that a little guy who has just entered the Qi refining stage can easily defeat. When he killed that demonic beast, he overdrew the power of his innate rune, causing his body to be abnormally weak. That's why he's unconscious. Once his injuries are healed, he'll naturally wake up after resting for a while." Speaking of killing the demon beast, Aju looked at the unconscious Qin Chuan and couldn't help but praise him. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she really couldn't believe that there was a little guy who had just entered the Qi refining stage who could kill a demon beast. It must be known that this was not something that could be done with courage alone. What a young hero. Aju sighed and said, "You are lucky to have met him, otherwise you might not have been able to walk out of this Cloud Dragon Mountain range alive." On the second day after Yukai-er's group of 5 entered the Cloud Dragon Mountain range, the 5 great families of Xiang City acted together and sent people into the Cloud Dragon Mountain range to look for the whereabouts of Yukai-er's group, but after a few days, they found nothing. Until today, when they heard the earth-shattering sound of thunder and the crazy howl of the golden-haired gorilla, they found Yukai-er's group and rescued them. At that time, the other families wanted to take the unconscious Qin Chuan away, but they were stopped by Yukai-er. Before Qin Chuan fell into a coma, he had asked her to protect him. Since she had promised, she would definitely do it. Hearing this, Yukai couldn't help but blush slightly. She didn't expect that there would be so many twists and turns in this experiential learning. I've already warned you that this Cloud Dragon Mountain range is filled with danger, and you shouldn't enter it easily. All of you think that you're invincible, but you don't listen to my advice. This time, you should know that I didn't lie to you. Aju looked at Yukai with a smile and said, "However, it's not bad to experience such a thing once. At least I have never seen my family's Kai act so tough for a boy before." In Aju's impression, Yukai had always been a gentle, kind-hearted, and somewhat shy girl. But today, Yukai-er's unyielding attitude in the face of the elders of the other families really surprised Aju. She had watched Yukai grow up since she was a child. It was the first time that she had seen such a domineering appearance in Yukai. "I promised to protect him." Yukai looked at Qin Chuan, who was lying on the bed again, and whispered, "I can't break my promise." "You want to protect him?" Aju sighed and said, "Li Manny is dead. Who do you think will be responsible for this?" Yukai suddenly looked up at Aju and said, "Manny died in the hands of the golden-haired gorilla. We've already understood what happened, but some things aren't as simple as you think." Aju looked at Yukai with a slightly complicated look and whispered, "In fact, I hope that you can always be so kind and simple, but born in an aristocratic family, people with weak personalities usually don't have a good ending. Through this incident, I also hope that you can learn a lesson and recognize some facts." "What do you want to do?" Yukai subconsciously stood in front of Qin Chuan and looked at Zhu with some horror in her eyes. You can rest assured that I won't do anything to him, but when he wakes up, we can no longer protect him. Zhu said to Yu Kai with a very serious attitude. We don't need to go against the Leaf family for a stranger. This is not good for our Yu family. He is not an irrelevant person. He saved all of us. Yu Kai said to Zhu emotionally. We have agreed before that we will protect Qin Chuan together. Oh, they promised to protect Qin Chuan, but if the elders in their family don't come forward, what do you think they can do to protect Qin Chuan? Do they rely on their mouths? Zhu sneered and said, We will remember the kindness of saving our lives. We will definitely give him a generous reward, but this is another matter. We can't intervene in the matter between him and the Li family. No, Yu Kai shook her head. She would never agree to hand over Qin Chuan. Seeing Yu Kai's firm attitude, Zhu also knew that the test was almost done, so she asked Yu Kai, Tell me the truth, do you like this little guy? Yu Kai's face suddenly turned red like a ripe tomato. She lowered her head and refused to answer. Seeing her shy appearance, Zhu, as an experienced person, understood. It's not impossible to protect him, but our Yu family needs an excuse to do so. I think that the future son-in-law of our Yu family is a very good excuse. Zhu looked at Yu Kai with a slightly subtle look and said, I don't know if you are willing or not. Outside the tent, Zhu dialed the family head's phone and said, Kai agreed. She is willing to announce that Qin Chuan is her fiancé. Things are well done. A somewhat low voice came from the other side of the phone. If the Li family has to go against our future son-in-law, then we have no reason to stand idly by. Zhu was somewhat puzzled and asked, In order to win over such a little guy, is it really appropriate to marry Kai? Although this matter was facilitated by her, she really did not understand why the family head issued such an order. Marry? I don't think so. The person on the other side of the phone laughed. His name is Qin Chuan. He has activated the talent rune and has the thunder attribute. Don't you think this information is a bit familiar? What method do you think he used to defeat that demon beast? Zhu whispered these keywords softly. As if thinking of something, her eyes suddenly lit up and she exclaimed, It's him, the Qin Chuan who shocked the world with the Thunder Talisman Array in the Hidden Dragon Arena. He must have used the Thunder Talisman Array to kill the demon beast. Now, do you still think this marriage is inappropriate? Chapter 81. Oh, this is... Qin Chuan slowly opened his eyes and looked at the surroundings with a slightly confused look. This gorgeous tent made Qin Chuan wonder if he was still in the Cloud Dragon mountain range. He tried to sit up, but his head hurt so much that he couldn't help but cry out in pain. Qin Chuan, you're awake. Yu Kai who was sleeping soundly beside the bed, heard the noise made by Qin Chuan and immediately woke up. She looked at Qin Chuan with surprise and said, Don't move. I'll let the doctor check your body. After saying that, Yu Kai got up and ran out of the tent, shouting for the doctor. Seeing Yu Kai's figure, Qin Chuan had a general understanding of his situation. The appearance of this tent should be related to the several aristocratic families in Xi'ang City. It seemed that a lot of things had happened while he was in a coma. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, Yu Kai came back with the doctor. The doctor used a scanner to do a comprehensive examination for Qin Chuan, and then said to Yu Kai, Miss, young Master Qin doesn't have any serious problems. It's just that he overdrew the power of his talent rune and the mental strength of his brain, so his body is still very weak. He just needs to rest for a while. If he wants to recover quickly, he can take some medicine. Thank you, doctor. Qin Chuan said to the doctor with a slightly hoarse voice, I know my situation. I'm sorry to trouble you. In order to kill that demonic beast, although Qin Chuan set up a thunder summoning talisman array, the weather was clear at that time, and there was no thunder to be attracted. The thunder power that Qin Chuan used at that time came from the remaining 3 thunderstones and his talent rune. In order to kill in one blow, Qin Chuan didn't dare to hold back, which led to the overdraft of his power, leaving behind this headache. You're welcome. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. The doctor smiled, packed up his toolbox, and left the tent, leaving the space for Qin Chuan and Yu Kai. After the doctor left, Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai, who was sitting on the bed with a shy face, and said, "What are you shy about?" Yu Kai shook her head in a panic and said incoherently, "No, I didn't." "Forget it. Tell me what happened after I was in a coma." Qin Chuan shook his head. It didn't matter why Yu Kai was shy for the time being. What was important, he needed to understand the current situation and grasp the key information so that he could make the corresponding arrangements for the next step. After you fainted, the power of thunder lost control and began to spread in all directions. We were also affected and were all paralyzed and unable to move. At this time, the family members who had entered the Cloud Dragon Mountain range to look for us heard the commotion and rushed over to save us. Later, I brought you to our Yu family's camp. That's about it. Yu Kai simply told what happened when Qin Chuan was in a coma. She didn't leave out too much, but Qin Chuan instinctively felt that something was wrong. "No, you should be hiding some information." Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai deeply and said, "Li Mani is dead." Did the Li family accept this result so easily and remain indifferent to her death? The Li family doesn't dare to go too far with you, the children of aristocratic families, but they shouldn't let a poor boy like me off so easily. Although Qin Chuan didn't come from an aristocratic family, he knew the style of aristocratic families very well. These people might be polite to other aristocratic families, but they would be arrogant and domineering to ordinary people. He didn't believe that a family that could cultivate an arrogant child like Li Mani would let him off so easily. Although Li Mani's death was purely her own fault, an aristocratic family that had nowhere to vent their anger casually implicated an ordinary person in order to show that the dignity of an aristocratic family couldn't be offended. Wasn't this a very normal operation? Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yu Kai-er's face slightly changed, and then she said to Qin Chuan with a guilty conscience, "In fact, the Li family did want to make trouble for you, but you are my savior, so this time our Yu family blocked it for you. So you don't have to worry about whether the Li family will make trouble for you. I can accept your explanation, but your face looks a little strange." Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai-er with a puzzled look. He always felt that Yu Kai-er was hiding something from him, but she obviously didn't want to say it. "Well, have a good rest. I will come to see you tomorrow morning." Yu Kai-er left such a sentence and hurriedly ran out of the tent. Looking at Yu Kai-er's leaving figure, Qin Chuan became more and more suspicious. However, the current situation didn't allow him to go out to investigate, so he could only recuperate first. The night passed quickly. After a whole night of recuperation, coupled with the advanced nutrition and healing potions provided by the Yu family for free, Qin Chuan's body had almost recovered. Although his head still hurt from time to time, at least he could get out of bed and walk around. Qin Chuan changed into the new clothes prepared for him by the maid. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Aristocratic families were indeed aristocratic families. They even had to bring such luxurious mobile tents and maids to search for people in the mountains. No one would doubt that they were here for an excursion. Qin Chuan walked out of the tent and glanced at the cooks and waiters who were busy preparing breakfast in the camp. Then he looked at a few people who were chatting together. At this time, those people also stopped talking and looked at Qin Chuan. They pointed at Qin Chuan and began to whisper again. "Qin Chuan, why are you up?" Yu Kai-er came out of the tent and saw Qin Chuan standing in camp. She couldn't help but ask with concern, "How is your body?" "I am very good." Qin Chuan looked calmly at a Zhu who was standing beside Yu Kai-er and asked, "Let me introduce you. This is my sister. Her name is Zhu." Yu Kai-er took Zhu's arm and said to Qin Chuan, "You can call her sister Zhu with me." Zhu looked at Qin Chuan with a smile and said, "Young hero, you are finally awake? Our Kai has been worried about you all day." "Sister Zhu." Yu Kai-er glared at Zhu and said, "Don't talk nonsense." "Thank you, Kai-er, for your concern, and thank you, Sister Zhu, for your care." Qin Chuan slightly pursed his lips and said, "Although I saved Kai, you also saved me, so now we don't owe each other anything. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave first." Chapter 82. You are leaving? But where are you going? Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. Hearing that Qin Chuan was about to leave, Yukai immediately became anxious. She quickly stepped forward and pulled Qin Chuan's sleeve, unwilling to let Qin Chuan leave. Qin Chuan smiled and said to Yukai, the college entrance examination is coming soon. I should go home to see my friends and get together with them. If there is a chance in the future, we should be able to meet again. Qin Chuan's explanation was reasonable, and no one could find any reason to refute it. But, Yukai said 2 buts in a row, but she couldn't find any reason to persuade Qin Chuan to stay. Qin Chuan, if you want to leave now, I have no reason to force you to stay. But you have to know that once you leave this camp, the Li family may not let you go. Zhu looked at Qin Chuan deeply and said, if you want to go home, we can arrange an inner-city train to send you back. This way, not only is it safe and fast, but it can also save you enough time to recuperate. What do you think? I don't deserve it. Qin Chuan looked at Zhu seriously and said, your Yu family has already paid off what you owe me. I don't want to owe you any favors. There are some words that Qin Chuan still had to make clear, because he didn't want to have any involvement with the aristocratic families. He had a friendship with Yukai, but it didn't mean that he had to be friends with the Yu family. What do you mean by aren't we a family? While speaking, Zhu looked at the blushing Yukai with a strange look. Could it be that this little girl didn't explain to Qin Chuan yesterday? A family? Qin Chuan was a little confused. How did they become a family? Seeing the confused look on Qin Chuan's face, Zhu understood that Yukai didn't explain to Qin Chuan yesterday. Otherwise, Qin Chuan wouldn't be so anxious to draw a line with the Yu family today. Qin Chuan, I know that you have experienced some things, so you hate the aristocratic families from the bottom of your heart. But there are countless aristocratic families in this world, and not every aristocratic family style of conduct is annoying. Zhu patiently explained to Qin Chuan. This time, in order to repay you for saving Kai Er's life, we blocked the anger of the Li family for you. Do you know what price we pay for this? Qin Chuan frowned slightly and said, I will definitely repay you in the future. Repay? How are you going to repay Kai Er's reputation? Zhu subtly looked at Qin Chuan and said, can you repay it, girls? Kai Er's reputation? Qin Chuan was a little stunned. He glanced at Yukai, who was standing beside him with her head bowed. A big question mark appeared in his head. What the hell is going on? In order to protect you, we have to announce that you are Kai Er's fiancé. In this way, you are a member of our Yu family. Naturally, the Li family won't dare to do anything excessive to you. Zhu calmly explained to Qin Chuan. This news is already spread throughout the entire Xiang city. Everyone knows that you are Kai Er's fiancé. If you leave quietly, how will Kai go out to meet people in the future? Qin Chuan was a little dizzy. He was unconscious for half a day, and suddenly he became Kai Er's fiancé. Sister Zhu, how about? Let him go? Kai raised her head and looked at Zhu. Her eyes were slightly red and filled with tears. She looked really pitiful and sad. Kai, if he leaves, what will you do? Zhu looked at Yukai, with some distress. She couldn't bear to see Yukai cry. I'm sorry, I didn't know that things would turn out like this. Qin Chuan looked at Yukai, with a very complicated expression. It was impossible to say that a girl's reputation was not important, but it was too much to ask him to bear this responsibility. Now that you know, what are you going to do? Zhu turned to look at Qin Chuan, waiting for Qin Chuan's answer. If Qin Chuan dared to say something like explaining to the outside world, she would kill this bastard. I want to know, is this really just an excuse for you to protect me? Or, Qin Chuan looked at Zhu deeply and said, are you going to make this a real show? Zhu sneered when she heard the words. What? Do you think that Kai is not worthy of you? I don't mean that. Qin Chuan shook his head. Kai Er's reputation is important, but my reputation is not necessarily important. After this storm is over, you can find a reason at any time, such as I cheated, or that a long-distance relationship is too hard, and then cancel this engagement. In short, Qin Chuan did not want to make this a real show. Even if there was a relationship between him and Yu Kai, it was definitely friendship, not love. Qin never believed in love at first sight. Long-distance relationship is too hard? What kind of reason is this? Zhu looked at Qin with extremely angry eyes and said angrily, "You don't like her? Do you really think that Kai will only marry you?" "You misunderstood," Qin said with a headache. "I just don't want to delay, Kai." He was now patiently explaining to Zhu, on the one hand, because the Yu family did help him block the anger of the Li family, and on the other hand, because he didn't want to hurt Yu Kai. Otherwise, with Qin's character, he would have already left. Qin. Yu Kai looked at Qin with some grievances and said, "Is Kai not good enough?" In the face of Yu Kai's inquiry, Qin said helplessly, "Kai, I am wholeheartedly focused on cultivation and have no interest in the love between men and women. Love without a material basis was a plate of loose sand, and love without a foundation of strength was also a plate of loose sand." Today, Qin only wanted to become stronger and really had no interest in love. Qin's explanation sounded like an excuse to Yu Kai. Thinking of Qin once said in the tree hole that he didn't like her and didn't want her to marry him, Yu Kai felt that her heart was about to break. "Where's Qin? Tell him to come out." At this moment, a very arrogant shout came from outside the camp, and then a group of people forced their way into the camp. Seeing the arrival of these people, Zhu's face suddenly became cold, and she said angrily, "Li Sun, you are too much. This is our Yu family's camp. Do you think it is a market where you can enter and leave at will? Zhu, as long as you are willing to hand over Qin, our Li family will immediately apologize to you and compensate you 10 times the damage. What do you think?" After that, the tall and thin Li Sun looked at the people in the camp and said coldly, "Where is that Qin who should be cut into pieces?" Chapter 83. Looking at Li Sun, who had brought people into the camp, Qin looked at Zhu with a profound look. "Is this what you meant when you said that the Li family did not dare to do anything to me?" Facing Qin's gaze, Zhu was extremely ashamed and angry. She secretly hated that the Li family had come at the wrong time. Now that Qin was unwilling to agree to the marriage between him and Yu Kai, should she protect Qin or let the Li family take away Qin? But if the Li family really took away Qin today, then the face of the Yu family would be trampled under the feet of the Li family. In the future, how would the people of the Yu family go out to meet people? While Zhu was thinking about these things, Qin had already stepped forward and calmly stood in front of Li Sun. "I am Qin." The people of the Li family had already come to the door. Qin also had no way to be a coward and pretend that nothing had happened. Li Sun looked at Qin, who stood out. His eyes suddenly became gloomy and coldly said, "You are the Qin who killed Manny. Li Manny's death is her own fault. If someone has to bear the responsibility, then it should be Guixing who pushed Li Manny. I really don't understand why you are looking for me." Qin looked at Li Sun calmly and said, "If the reason is because I am a civilian who is easy to bully, then I can reluctantly accept it." "Humph! If you didn't insist on taking the Thunder Spirit Stone, how could Manny be in danger alone?" Li Sun looked at Qin with cold eyes. "So many people were chased by evil beasts. Why didn't you die? But Manny, if I die, then everyone else will die." Qin faintly responded, "If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Now that you have found me, but you are not in a hurry to take action. It seems that you're not ready to kill me. Then you should have other plans." "Let me think." Qin pondered deeply for a moment, and then he laughed coldly and said, "Li Manny can be considered to be a genius of your Li clan. Now that she's dead, your Li clan has lost a genius. You wouldn't be thinking of capturing me back to your Li clan and forcing me to work for your Li clan, right?" When Qin's voice fell, the expression on Li Sun's face became a little surprised. He did not expect that Qin actually guessed the truth of the matter. Qin said, "Li Sun to work for you, Qin. Qin want to work for the Li family to work." If the Yu family could find out Qin's true identity, the Li family could naturally do the same. Although Li Manny was dead, if they could get a genius who was 10 times stronger than Li Manny to work for the Li family, such a loss was not unacceptable. This was the ruthlessness of the aristocratic families. In their eyes, only benefits were the most important. In fact, the Yu family announced that Qin Chuan was Yu Kai-er's fiancé, which was another way to recruit Qin Chuan. Compared to the Li family, the Yu family did it more secretly. It was precisely because of this that Qin Chuan wanted to explain the matter clearly. Manny can't die in vain. Li Sun took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said, "We have already sent people to summon Manny's soul. If you don't want to die, you'd better make a choice now." With Li Manny's arrogant and paranoid character, she would not let go of Qin Chuan and Guoxing even if she became a ghost. Guoxing had the protection of the Guo family. At worst, he could compensate the Li family with some money. The Li family would not fall out with the Guo family because of a dead person. As for Qin Chuan, he had no one to rely on, so he was at the mercy of the Li family. So what if Li Manny was a genius? A dead genius was just a dead person. Don't go too far. A delicate figure stepped forward and stood in front of Qin Chuan. She said angrily to Li Sun, "Don't you think you can force Qin Chuan to do something he doesn't want to do?" Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai in surprise. He did not expect that after he had clearly refused, Yu Kai was still willing to stand in front of him and fight against the Li family for him. Zhu, who was still thinking about the pros and cons, saw that Yu Kai had already made a decision. She could not help but sigh helplessly. She was afraid that today's matter would be difficult to resolve. Is this how the Yu family teaches their children to talk to their elders? Li Sun stared at Zhu with extremely sharp eyes. If the Yu family's discipline is not strict enough, the Li family is not afraid of trouble. We are willing to discipline them on your behalf. Humph! Li Sun, you don't have to be so sarcastic here. If the Li family's discipline was good, Li Manny would not have killed herself, and you would not have broken into our Yu family's camp. Zhu stepped forward and said coldly, "Everyone of the Yu family, listen to my order. If anyone dares to run amok in our Yu family's camp, immediately capture them. If they dare to resist, kill them." With Zhu's order, the Yu family's people in the camp immediately acted and surrounded the Li family's people. Some of them even pulled out their alloy weapons, as if they were ready to fight at any time. Seeing this scene, Li Sun's face could not help but change slightly. This time, he did not bring many people. If they really fought, they would suffer a big loss. If they really died here, it would be too much of a loss. "You, Zhu, do you really want to go to war with our Li family?" Li Sun looked at Zhu and said, "If you do this, aren't you afraid that your Yu family's master will blame you?" "You are not afraid of your Li family's master blaming you. Why should I be afraid?" Zhu sneered. "If you really have the guts, then try to move now and see if I really dare to kill you." While speaking, Zhu had pulled out a strangely shaped silver-white pistol from her waist and aimed the muzzle at Li Sun's forehead. The muzzle of the gun gradually lit up with a scarlet light. As long as Zhu pulled the trigger, it would immediately shoot out a laser and kill Li Sun. Good. Li Sun was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He pointed at Zhu and said "good" 3 times. Then he glared at Qin Chuan and said, "I hope you can live under the protection of the Yu family for the rest of your life. Otherwise, my Li family will not forgive you." In the face of Li Sun's threat, Qin Chuan was extraordinarily calm. He glanced at Yu Kai, who was in front of him, and said softly, "When the doctor checked my body yesterday, he said that my stomach is not very good." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yu Kai could not help but look back at Qin Chuan with a puzzled expression. She was also present when the doctor checked Qin Chuan's body yesterday. Did the doctor say that Qin Chuan's stomach was not very good? So, the doctor advised me to live off a woman in the future. When Yu Kai heard Qin Chuan's last sentence, she finally understood the meaning of Qin Chuan. Her face could not help but blush slightly. Looking at Qin Chuan, her eyes became a little happy and shy. Did Qin Chuan mean that he agreed? Chapter 84. No matter how angry Li Sun was, he didn't dare to really turn against Yu family. So after leaving some harsh words, he left with his people. After the people of Li family left, a Zhu looked at Qin Chuan and Yu Ke, who were standing together, sighed and said, "Come with me." Qin Chuan and Yu Kai followed a Zhu into the tent. A Zhu took out a sparkling blue crystal ball and put it on the table, isolating the sound inside and outside the tent. Then she looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "What do you mean now?" Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai, who was standing next to him, then looked at a Zhu and said in a very serious tone, "To tell you the truth, I don't have any feelings for Kai. If there must be feelings, then it must be friendship, not love." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yu Kai couldn't help but lower her head. It seemed that she didn't want others to see the change of expression on her face. A Zhu looked at Qin Chuan with a cold face and said, "What do you mean by your last words?" "First of all, I'm very grateful to your Yu family for protecting me from the Li family. Whether it is because of your family's face or because of my relationship with Kai, in short, you did help me. I have to admit that I now owe your Yu family a favor." Qin Chuan had always been a person who clearly distinguished between gratitude and grudges. Since Yu family helped him, then he owed Yu family. He couldn't go against his conscience and pretend that nothing happened. From the attitude of Li family to your Yu family, I think that my identity should have been exposed. In fact, I don't have any identity. I'm just an ordinary person with some talent. Qin Chuan glanced at Yu Kai with a complicated look in his eyes and said, "Actually, I hope that the relationship between Kai and I can be more pure and that there shouldn't be anything special in it. I can promise your Yu family that in the future, I can do one thing for your Yu family within the scope of my ability. This promise will always be valid." Qin Chuan made this promise. It was a kind of repayment for Yu family's kindness. As for what he owed Yu Kai, it was not so easy to calculate. "You have said so much, but you haven't said how to deal with the relationship between you and Kai." Zhu didn't take Qin Chuan's promise to heart. It was true that Qin Chuan was very talented and had potential, but before he really grew up, his promise was worthless. "I think the reason why Kai is willing to announce that I am her fiancé is because she has some special feelings for me." Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said softly, "In fact, Kai and I have only known each other for 2 days. I don't think that I have such great charm that I can make Kai fall in love with me in just 2 days. So, instead of saying that Kai loves me, it's better to say that I am the only person she can rely on in those 2 days. I made her rely on me and trust me from the bottom of her heart." In the case of a blank, emotional world, Kai mistakenly regarded this reliance and trust as her love for me. I think that if I let Kai return to her normal life, maybe it won't take long for Kai to understand that she doesn't like me. In that case, Kai shouldn't agree to continue to have that kind of relationship with me. Hearing Qin Chuan's long speech, a Zhu couldn't help but look at Yu Kai with a puzzled look. In fact, she also felt that Yu Kai's feelings for Qin Chuan were a bit strange. In just 2 days, it shouldn't be enough for Yu Kai to completely fall in love with Qin Chuan. Even if there were some feelings, it should be very hazy. The reason why Yu Kai was willing to announce that Qin Chuan was her fiancé was probably to protect Qin Chuan. There was not much love between a man and a woman. "Kai, what do you think?" A Zhu was somewhat helpless. The patriarch's order was to let her match Qin Chuan and Yu Kai, but now that Qin Chuan didn't want to, she didn't want to wrong Kai. She was afraid that this matter would be ruined. "Sister Zhu, you go out first. I have something to say to Qin Chuan alone." Yu Kai still bowed her head, refusing to let others see her face. A Zhu took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said hatefully, "If you dare to bully Kai, you will die." After leaving this sentence, a Zhu turned and walked out of the tent. It was more appropriate to let the parties involved solve the matter between a man and a woman. After a Zhu left, Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai with complicated eyes and said, "I'm really sorry. This matter is not your fault." Yu Kai slowly raised her head and looked at Qin Chuan with moist eyes and said, "We made such a decision when you were in a coma. It was a bit disrespectful to you. It's normal that you don't want to. Moreover, you also said that you don't like me and don't want me to devote myself to you. You are so good, I really don't deserve you. Qin Chuan hurriedly explained, No, I said that as a joke. How can you not deserve me? It's me who doesn't deserve you. Is what you said true? Yu Kai looked at Qin Chuan with some expectation. It's true, Qin Chuan said with a serious face. I don't deserve you, but I think what you said is wrong. I don't just rely on and trust you. I really like you. Yu Kai blinked and said to Qin Chuan very seriously, Although I have never been in love, I still have some understanding of what it feels like to like someone. However, I know that you don't like me now, but it doesn't mean that you won't like me in the future. Why don't we make an agreement? What agreement? Qin Chuan's mind was already in a mess at this time. He really didn't know how to solve the matter perfectly on the premise of not hurting Yu Kai. You said that you are focused on cultivation and have no interest in love. I can understand this. After all, we haven't graduated from high school, and there are at least 3 years of college life. This is a very important period in our lives, and we really shouldn't be bothered by other things. So, let's make an agreement of 3 years. In these 3 years, we will still be friends. If after 3 years, you still don't like me, or I don't like you, then our relationship will be friends, pure friends. Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai with a strange look and asked, Then, if you still I'm not being narcissistic, I'm just assuming if you still like me. Yu Kai slightly raised the corner of her mouth and said coquettishly, Then, please give me a chance to pursue you for the sake of friends. Chapter 85. Aju didn't know what Qin Chuan and Yu Kai talked about in private, but she could see that after the chat, Qin Chuan was relieved and Yu Kai was also happy. What's the result? Aju glanced at Qin Chuan and then looked at Yu Kai. Facing Aju's inquiry, Yu Kai's face turned slightly red and replied, Qin Chuan is still my fiancé, but this relationship should not be made public for the time being. In addition, we will not get married now. At least, we have to wait until we graduate from college to determine whether this relationship should continue. Hearing Yu Kai's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but look at Aju with a strange gaze. Previously, Aju had said that the relationship between him and Yu Kai had already been made known to everyone in Xiang City. Now it seemed that it was purely a lie. This also explained why the Li family would so arrogantly come knocking on their door. Facing Qin Chuan's deep eyes, Aju looked at Yu Kai with some helplessness. Yu Kai's words made it clear that she was telling Qin Chuan that they had deceived him before. However, it seemed that Qin Chuan didn't want to hold on to this matter, which made her feel relieved. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing. I probably understand what you mean. Whether it is to cancel the engagement or to fulfill the engagement, you have to wait until 3 years to make a decision, right? For this result, Aju could also accept it. She looked at Yu Kai with some pity and said, You are the princess of our Yu family. Don't wrong yourself. And you? Aju stared fiercely at Qin Chuan and said, In these 3 years, you'd better practice wholeheartedly. If you dare to flirt outside, I will kill you. I will. Qin Chuan smiled and didn't take Aju's threat too seriously. After solving a series of things, Yu family was ready to return to Xiang City. Qin Chuan naturally had to go with them. Before leaving, several elders of other families wanted to see Qin Chuan, saying that they wanted to thank Qin Chuan, but they were all rejected by Aju. The reason was that Qin Chuan was scared by the people of Li family and was sick. As for whether this explanation would make other families look down on Qin Chuan, Aju didn't care. Qin Chuan stood on the hillside and looked at the large, luxurious airship parked at the foot of the mountain. He couldn't help but sigh. Aristocratic families were really worthy of being called an aristocratic family. The journey from Xiang City to Cloud Dragon Mountain Range was only a few hundred kilometers, but it was actually worth it for them to use an airship. However, thinking of those luxurious and exquisite tents, as well as a large number of maids and attendants, Qin Chuan felt relieved. If there was no airship, it would really be difficult to bring so many people and things. Your family should be very strong. Qin Chuan glanced at Yukai, standing beside him, and asked, "Generally, rich people can't buy such an airship. Even a most basic civilian airship was not something that could be bought with money. To really own an airship, one must have a noble identity and powerful strength. Since Yu family could own such a large and luxurious airship, their strength was obviously not ordinary. It must be known that the airships of the other families were just ordinary civilian airships, which were nothing compared to the large and luxurious airship of Yu family. I don't know. This airship was bought by my grandfather." Yukai looked confused. She didn't know much about this. "Let's go. Take me to see it. I have never taken an airship before." Qin Chuan grinned and asked Yukai, "Tell me, how can I pretend that I often take airships?" Yukai pursed her lips and smiled. "You don't have to pretend. This feeling can't be faked." Qin Chuan. Although Qin Chuan was already mentally prepared, he was still surprised by the luxurious interior design of the airship. In the lounge of the airship, Qin Chuan was like a curious baby, looking left and right, full of curiosity about everything. Yukai followed Qin Chuan and patiently introduced the functions of some equipment to Qin Chuan. She didn't expect that the mature and steady Qin Chuan in the Cloud Dragon Mountain range would have such a cute side. Yes, in Yukai eyes, Qin Chuan, who acted like a country bumpkin entering a city, was really cute. When I was outside, I thought that such an airship was worth about a few $100 million, but now it seems that I was really ignorant. This airship is definitely worth more than $2 billion. Qin Chuan was jealous. $2 billion. How many high-level cultivation resources could he buy with that? Your estimation is right. This airship is a luxury premium version of the Meteor series, and its price is $2.4 billion. Aju, who had changed into a casual outfit, slowly walked over with a glass of red wine and stood beside Yukai. She looked at Qin Chuan with a smile and said, "It seems that you don't have a special understanding of the strength of our Yu family." "Indeed." Qin Chuan nodded frankly. "I am just a poor boy who hasn't seen much of the world." The most valuable thing Qin Chuan had ever come into contact with was probably Zhou Lin's 9th Skywalker shuttle. But although that shuttle was a limited edition, its value was about $200 million. Compared with this airship, it was really nothing. Thinking of Zhou Lin, Qin Chuan felt that it was necessary to contact Zhou Lin and tell her the good news that he had successfully advanced to the qi refining stage. He didn't know if Zhou Lin had successfully advanced to the foundation establishment stage during the few months he was in the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. "You are the most honest young man I have ever seen." Aju smiled slightly and said, "Few boys don't care about their image and casually admit their shortcomings. I don't think this is a shortcoming. I think it's very cute." Yukai looked innocent. She felt that Qin Chuan was very real. He was much better than those people who said they were powerful, but in fact, they didn't have the slightest ability. Aju looked at Yukai with a dumbfounded expression. She actually used cute to describe Qin Chuan? "By the way, this is yours." Aju suddenly took out a yellow cobblestone-sized stone and handed it to Qin Chuan and said, "This is the demon core of that demon beast. You killed it. This thing belongs to you." Looking at the demon core handed over by Aju, Qin Chuan was very surprised. He had only heard of the existence of demon cores, but it was the first time he had seen the real thing. "Thank you." Qin Chuan didn't argue and directly reached out and took the demon core. He was very sure of money. This demon core should be very good to fill his wallet. This demon core is of the earth attribute. It should be able to sell for a good price. If you trust our Yu family, you can take it to the auction. Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment. Auction? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.